Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha Massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. Chapter 1, Gawain, is not a foolish knight. Life is fucked up. Gawain just passed the civil servant interview yesterday morning. He thought he would be able to get a job in a few months and have a secure future. Although the life of a civil servant is plain and dull, in this era when retirement is basically declared at the age of 35, who can refuse a permanent meal ticket? As for the problem of having a hard time finding a partner due to low income. In the current economy, no one even talks about that. Besides, it shouldn't be an exaggeration to say that civil servants are firmly in the first tier in the blind date market, right? Who knew that when Gawain woke up, he would be on the deserted island in front of him, wearing tight black leather armor, with a few wounds on his body and blood oozing out from under the bandages. At this time, a noisy sound reaches Gawain's ears. Although we have gotten rid of that bastard, Morgan, for the time being, he will be able to find this place in 2 or 3 months at most. Our ship was also damaged in the previous battle. If it cannot be repaired, it will be difficult to continue sailing. Then we will. Captain, what shall we do next? Dozens of pirates surrounded Gawain, talking to each other, and the scene suddenly became noisy, but anyone could hear the panic in their tone. Gawain felt dizzy after being bombarded by a loud noise and subconsciously shouted, "Quiet." After some thought, Gawain sorted out the messy memories in his mind. He is none other than the captain of this pirate group, the great pirate Gawain the White Knight, who has a bounty of 8 million belly. He encountered Morgan at sea a few days ago, was defeated after a battle, and led the remaining crew to flee to this deserted island. Although he not only inherited the name of a certain predecessor but also his heroic appearance, the only thing he lacks is the other party's invincible ability in the Fate series. For a moment, Gawain felt that life was even more fucked up. It would be fine if he had just traveled to a parallel world, but he had traveled to the world of One Piece and was directly put on a wanted list, with Marines chasing him relentlessly. If the current situation continues, if he's lucky, he will be sent to jail and live a life worse than death, but if he's unlucky, he will be buried in the sea. No matter how you look at it, neither of these situations is a good choice. As for Morgan, Gawain had some impression of him. To be honest, in the worldview of One Piece, Morgan is just a fallen marine who can only barely show off his power in the East Blue. Anyone on the Grand Line can hang him up and beat him. But here comes the problem. Gawain couldn't beat him. His predecessor had just fought with that guy not long ago. He was suppressed the whole time and had no power to fight back at all. The knight's sword in his hand was chopped into several pieces by the axe. This incident fully proves that although Morgan is not good, he is still able to make the predecessor bleed with one axe, and not everyone can beat him. This also gave him an accurate positioning of his current combat power, miscellaneous fish. There is no comparison between them and those inhumanly powerful beings in Gawain's memory. Thinking of this, Gawain frowned slightly. He is a person who lives in the present and only dwells on current problems. And the most important thing for him right now is how to survive Morgan's pursuit. After some thought, Gawain still had no idea what was going on, and his eyes turned to the pirate in front of him. Everyone had an expression of panic and confusion on their faces. After half a month of continuous escape, everyone was already in a state of panic, with even a faint tendency of mutiny. It was just that Gawain had suppressed everyone with absolute force before, but now. Gawain glanced at the wounds on his body that were oozing blood. Among the crowd in the distance, there was also a gaze fixed on Gawain's bleeding wound. The man's mouth curled up into a sinister smile, and then he took a step forward, his voice as sharp as the sound of rubbing glass. "If you ask me, we should just go on our way. I have been following the captain for a few months, but I have not made any money. And I am not allowed to attack civilians. Brothers, don't even think about having a good life. We can barely even eat. Still stay here and wait to die? Or maybe we should change the captain." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd surged again, and the pirates who had originally surrounded Gawain subconsciously distanced themselves from him. Gawain also saw the face of the person who spoke. A bald, strong man who is over 3 meters tall and has muscles all over his body, but his voice is as thin as a woman's. The sturdy man's name is a lancer. He is Gawain's nominal deputy captain, but in fact, he has been coveting the position of captain for a long time. He has always been dissatisfied with Gawain's reluctance to attack civilians, and he even gathered a large number of followers in the crew with the intention of competing with Gawain. Now, he is afraid Lancer is planning to take advantage of his injury to gain power. A pirate group with less than 100 people can have so many unexpected problems. To this, Gawain can only say that the evil spirits are strong in a small temple, and there are many turtles in a shallow pond. In fact, if it were any other captain, he would have killed anyone in the crew who dared to challenge him. After all, even if it was Luffy, didn't he beat up Usopp, who challenged the captain's authority in Water 7? But the predecessor just didn't do that. He wanted to abide by the so-called chivalric precepts and kept talking about things like kindness and mercy, which were all nonsense. If you weren't so upright, why would you be a pirate? What? You slept with the princess from the kingdom of Go? Is her name still Guinevere? No, buddy, you got the wrong script. Isn't his the evil thing done by the purple-haired guy who is at odds with you? The key is that you are happy, and when you leave, it is me who has to clean up the mess. Gawain's eyes narrowed, and his expression turned cold. Whether it was a mutiny by subordinates or a crew being dissatisfied with the captain, the losing side would most likely die. If Gawain doesn't want to die, then someone else will have to die. Although it was a transmigration, the memories, experience, and fighting instincts left by the predecessor in this body still existed, and they inevitably had an impact on Gawain's thoughts. As for killing people, although his predecessor adhered to the spirit of chivalry, he became a pirate now, so whose hands wouldn't be stained with blood? Besides, a knight's mercy is only towards his own people. Once on the battlefield, he often plays the role of an executioner. At this moment, Gawain has the decisiveness that his predecessor does not have and the strength that Gawain does not have, his predecessor has. I can't control the ocean. Pa, those monsters on the sea, can't I control you? Gawain raised his eyes and looked at Lancer, his voice cold and stern. How? Are you going to attack me? Clang. The knight's sword slowly drew out of its sheath, its cold light reflecting the firelight. Gawain's aura suddenly changed, becoming fierce and sharp, with murderous intent all around him. The sudden change made the surrounding pirates look surprised. After following Gawain for several years, when had they ever seen Gawain show such murderous intent? Seeing this, Lancer gritted his teeth, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes, but at this moment, the arrow was on the string and had to be shot. Even though Gawain was injured, he still wasn't sure he could defeat him in a head-on confrontation. But he knew Gawain's character well. He was indecisive and soft-hearted towards his subordinates. This kind of person was the easiest to deceive and the easiest to deal with. Lancer clenched the flintlock in his hand with a look of deep pain on his face. Captain, do you really want to see all the crew on the ship die before you are willing to? Before Lancer could finish his words, Gawain took a step forward, narrowing the distance between the two of them, and his sword drew a silver light in the air. By the time everyone reacted, a head had already fallen slowly to the ground, and the flintlock that Lancer had just pulled out was also cut off by Gawain's sword. Snap! In the broken barrel, the unfired black powder floated away like dust. Lancer's headless body still retained the original movement of drawing the gun. After twitching a few times, he fell on his back, with blood all over the ground. Whoosh! Gawain wiped the blood off the sword, looked around coldly, and said without any fluctuation in his tone, "Who else?" The crowd was silent for a moment. The scene before them was enough to scare them. After all, no one expected that Gawain would act so decisively, not even leaving Lancer any room for maneuver. You have to know that with his previous character, he would never take the initiative to draw his sword against his own people until the last moment. This is also the reason why Lancer and others dared to force the palace even though they were not as strong as Gawain. But now everything seems to have changed. But such a captain made them feel extremely reliable, which might be the way pirates should be. Strong, cold-blooded, and ruthless, only such people can survive longer at sea. Seeing no one respond, Gawain returned to his seat. Several pirates with pale faces came forward and dragged Lancer's body away, leaving a trail of bloody blood. The surroundings were eerily quiet for a moment. From Lancer forcing the Emperor to abdicate to Gawain's sudden murder, it took only a dozen seconds, but the shock it brought to everyone was unprecedentedly strong. It was because the captain, who had always adhered to the spirit of chivalry, finally showed his most ferocious fangs at this moment. The fire of hope was rekindled in everyone's eyes as they looked at Gawain. If they had looked at Gawain out of instinct just now, then at this moment, they really regarded him as his savior. Gawain was not interested in their reactions. Suddenly, a mechanical prompt sounded in his mind. Helm of Destiny system activated. Congratulations on unlocking the badge, Captain's Fury. Effect: Crew's physical strength recovery speed plus 20%. Chapter 2, If you are not strong, you cannot survive Helm of Destiny system. Gawain's eyes lit up when he realized what was happening, and a light blue translucent panel slowly unfolded in front of him. The people around him had no reaction to this. Apparently, only Gawain himself could see the panel clearly. Helm of Destiny System, Host, Gawain, Age, 24, Identity, Captain of the White Knight Pirate, Bounty, 8 million belly, Epithet, White Knight, Skill, Swordsmanship, Level 4, 431 800, Physique, Level 3, 357 400, Navigation, Level 1, 3950, Badge, Captain's Fury, Subordinate's Physical Strength Recovery Speed plus 20%, Rating, Iron, Trashy, no need to say more. Looking at the glaring word trash at the end of the panel, Gawain's mouth twitched slightly, and then he focused all his attention on the system. Soon, Gawain figured out the function of the system. For every bit of progress the crew made in their training, Gawain would receive 10 times the benefit. The character rating represents one's current strength, and there are 6 levels from bottom to top: iron, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, and platinum. The higher you go, the stronger the combat power. For example, Whitebeard, Roger, and others at their peak basically have a diamond rating. The 4 emperors and the admirals start from the gold level, and some can reach the diamond level. The 7 warlords of the sea are mainly concentrated between the silver and gold ratings. As for the highest rating, platinum, it only exists in theory. A pirate like Gawain is undoubtedly at the bottom of the pirate world, a complete trash. However, compared with other pirates on the island, Gawain can barely be considered a larger trash. The badge in the prompt just now is also displayed on the panel, which can increase the crew's physical strength recovery speed by 20%. In other words, as long as I let my subordinates practice hard, I can directly get 10 times the benefits. I can even rely on the system's badge function to make these leaks. I mean, the crew members speed up their training, and I can harvest faster. What a capitalist. Gawain looked at the pirates around him and counted them briefly. Including the few shipwrights who stayed on the ship to repair the ship, there were almost 100 pirates left. He turned to look at the crew beside him. If we try our best to hide here, how long can we last? If we estimate optimistically, it will be about a month. 1 month. Gawain did a quick calculation. 30 days, 100 people, 10 times the efficiency. In other words, as long as he brings this group of pirates and practices here for a month, he can obtain the results of an ordinary person's practice for more than 80 years. Then, after overcoming this crisis, if he could recruit more geniuses under his command, as long as they practiced, he would be able to become stronger 10 times faster. This speed can even be stacked. According to Gawain's recollections, the current time is approximately year 1519 in the sea circle calendar, which is the year when Ace went out to sea. Ace's potential should be far above that of ordinary people. After all, he awakened his conqueror's haki, and he also had the blessing of Roger's blood. And the 2 main forces of the Straw Hat Pirates in the future, Zoro and Sanji, one is still a pirate hunter, and the other is still an apprentice at the ocean-going restaurant, Verity. As long as these 3 people don't die in the growth process, according to the system's evaluation standards, they will have the rating of gold or even diamond in the future. If I could bring them under my wing, how fast would I grow? Never mind. Let's think about something practical for now. Let's set a small goal first and defeat Morgan in 1 second. Gawain looked at the pirate, who was looking at him in awe and had an idea in mind. The next morning. Although the changes that happened to the pirate group last night were huge, Gawain also showed a decisive side that was completely different from the past, bringing unprecedented confidence to everyone. Therefore, their mental state was quite good. They were no longer at a loss as before, with panic written all over their faces. Even their actions became orderly. Gawain stood in front of the crowd, looking at his leaks with satisfaction. After a long silence, he spoke with a slightly heavy voice. Ahem. My dear brothers, after the shipwright's overnight inspection, I can only regretfully announce that we can no longer set sail. This means that we only have 2 options left for survival. First, we hope that other ships pass by before the Marines find us, but the possibility of this is very small, if not impossible. Second, we will wait for the Marines to arrive and seize the Marine ships. However, the Marines led by Morgan are definitely the elite troops in the East Blue. After all, we just suffered a crushing defeat at their hands. As soon as these words came out, the pirates at the scene suddenly panicked. The hope that had just risen because of Gawain was instantly poured with a bucket of cold water. In the minds of these pirates, Morgan is almost invincible. After all, even a strong captain like their own was injured by him and is still wrapped in bandages. I don't want to die, Captain, save me. There were even bursts of sobbing sounds from the crowd. In fact, most of the pirates of this era were just ordinary people who could not survive in their hometowns. If they have a knife or a gun in their hand and face other ordinary people, they will naturally be fearless, but fighting against some monsters is nothing but a pipe dream. Gawain saw everyone's reaction, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he thought to himself, done. This is the routine used by countless course sellers in his previous life: first, create anxiety and then sell the product. Although the routine is simple, it has been proven to be effective. After all, when there are so many people, there will always be a few fools who will be fooled. To Gawain, these pirates, who had only received a few days of education and had not experienced the impact of the information age, were actually not much different from fools. But Gawain raised his voice, can we just sit there and wait for death? Think about the oath you made when you set out to sea. Not to mention finding the One Piece, but what about the money? Where is the money? How can we surrender to the Marines when we haven't found anything yet? There is a minimum of 1 month that we can stay here. Do you want to take a chance and be a hero, or just wait to be killed? A louder voice suddenly erupted from the crowd. Under Gawain's deception, all the pirates had red faces on the spot and vines bulging on their necks. Fight him. Damn it, the timid ones will die of starvation, and the brave ones will die of gluttony. Captain, tell us what we should do. The crowd grew increasingly agitated. Gawain sighed secretly, thinking that it was so easy to deceive them. Brothers who are willing to follow me and take a gamble, please raise your hands. Whoosh. Without exception, nearly 100 people raised their hands with serious looks on their faces as they stared straight at Gawain with a fire burning in their eyes. Very good. Very energetic. Gawain smiled slightly and said, for the next month or so, please put aside all distractions and follow me in training. I will pass on everything I have learned throughout my life to you. Remember, you are not practicing for me, but for yourself, because in this era, you cannot survive if you are not strong. Your wealth can be taken away by swords, but your strength can never be taken away by anyone. Oh. There was a sudden burst of excited voices from below, and all the pirates were convinced by Gawain's words. That's right, only strength is fundamental. At first, I even naively thought that the Marines would do me justice and help me get my property back. It was not until I saw the nobles who had taken my property standing and laughing with the Marines that I realized that this world was already beyond redemption. Power is everything. A pirate with a mohawk hairstyle and fiery eyes, that's right. If you are not strong, you cannot survive. And now, the only one who can give us hope is Captain Gawain. Chapter 3, Skill Improvement. Then Gawain asked the remaining shipwright to hide in the ship as a temporary base, while he and his men found an open space on the island and had everyone stand in different areas. Soon, Gawain began to teach everyone the most basic swordsmanship. From the initial sword-holding posture to how to exert force, how to block the enemy's attack, to how to fight more efficiently. They were holding real swords or wooden sticks in their hands, but they were all extremely focused and even showed unprecedented fanaticism. They learned every move very seriously. Their diligence even made Gawain wonder if these people were too naive. But in fact, to these people, what Gawain said was indeed a wise saying, but he himself did not realize it. However, this does not do him any harm. Time flies, the sun gradually sets, and the moon rises. However, the crowd did not feel tired, and they were reluctant to put down their swords and sticks until late at night. Why am I not as tired as I thought after practicing for a whole day? It's an illusion. No, I feel it too. My physical strength seems to be better than before. If I had done so much exercise before, I would have been too tired to speak. But now, my legs are just a little weak. Amazing. Perhaps our efforts moved the gods? Oh, the gods are sitting in merry joys. Do you think they will bless you? It would be great if the heavenly tribute is not doubled. Everyone chatted at once and then skipped over the topic, simply thinking it was the benefit of their own concentration on training. Gawain knew that this should be the bonus brought by the system's badge. Increases physical strength recovery speed by 20% and is effective even during training. In other words, it is equivalent to a buff that reduces physical strength loss by 20% during practice and a buff that increases physical strength recovery speed by 20% during rest. Kill two birds with one stone, double the effect. But at this moment, Gawain's focus was not on the effect of the badge but on the system panel. Swordsmanship, Level 4, 431 800, greater than swordsmanship, Level 4, 453 800, physique, Level 3, 357 400, greater than physique, Level 3, 384 400. After only 1 day of training, these pirates increased his swordsmanship experience by 22 points and physique's experience by 27 points. In other words, an ordinary person's 1 day practice can only increase their experience by 0.0 something. It is almost impossible for an ordinary person to practice their swordsmanship to Gawain's level without decades of continuous hard work. In sharp contrast to them are Zoro, Sanji, and others, it only took them 2 or 3 years to grow to a level close to the strongest in the world. This was certainly because fighting made people grow faster, but more of it was due to their exaggerated talents. The gap in talent between people is almost infinitely magnified in this world. Gawain's current talent is obviously not at a genius level, it is just one level stronger than those of ordinary people. However, as long as the system can maintain its current efficiency, these two abilities can at least increase by another 700 to 800 experience points after more than a month. Swordsmanship will definitely be able to break through to level 5, and if everyone works hard enough, his physique may also break through to level 5. But I didn't know how much the level 5 swordsmanship and physique could improve my combat power. According to the system, every 5 skill levels is a hurdle that will determine my future direction. Gawain muttered to himself. At this time, the subordinates on the side handed over some fish and wild fruits picked from the island. The resources on this island are quite abundant, with wild fruits everywhere and the tubers of many plants being edible directly. In addition to that, the fish caught from the sea is enough for more than 100 people to practice for a few months. Gawain reached out to take it, picked up the piece of meat, and took a bite. The meat was dry, tough, and had a fishy smell. It certainly wasn't delicious, but in this environment, there was nothing to complain about. After all, for these pirates who came from the lower class, these are already rare delicacies, and sufficient protein and carbohydrate supplements are also of great benefit to their practice. Time flies, and half a month has passed. During this period, Gawain continued to guide his crew in their practice, and everyone gradually transitioned from the initial novelty to a peaceful stage, but the growth in these 10 days was real. If they were novices who knew nothing about swordsmanship at the beginning, they are now apprentices with a good foundation. This sword in my hand is completely different from before, it's just like my arm. I feel like I can beat 10 of my former selves now. Just blow it. It's true that we can feel our own growth, but don't forget that all these changes are brought about by the captain. Yes, after what happened with Lancer, the captain has completely changed and is completely different from before. It's not just his personality, but also his attitude towards us. But now, our current captain is the one who can truly lead us to become stronger. Gawain watched this scene from afar, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Suppose these people can continue to improve at this speed, even if everyone doesn't have the combat power of an ensign or lieutenant junior. They still have no problem protecting themselves in the East Blue with the swords in their hands. He didn't really deceive them. After all, in this world, only the strong have the power to stand up and live, while the weak can only crawl on the ground and beg for mercy. Captain, my arm is injured, and I would like to take 2 days off. A pirate wearing a white hat walked up to Gawain with a slightly apologetic look, covering his swollen arm with one hand, with an unwilling expression on his face. Gawain had some impression of this man. His name was Jamila. He came aboard half a year ago and was one of the few honest people on the ship. So he didn't make too many demands. He just reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Take a few days rest first. Don't let your impulsiveness leave you with permanent scars. Jamila nodded gratefully. A hint of coldness flashed across his eyes, and then he turned and walked towards the cabin. Looking at Jamila's figure, Gawain frowned. He doesn't know if it's an illusion. He saw a pendant shaped like a seagull on Jamila's chest. I hope I'm overthinking. Gawain shook his head, turned around, found a quiet place, and opened the system panel again. In the past half-month, his physique has been successfully upgraded to level 4, and the changes brought about are enormous. Speed and strength increased by at least 30%, endurance increased by nearly 50%, and even bone and muscle density increased significantly. But his body shape has not changed much. He is still a well-proportioned man over 2 meters tall. He looks thin when he is dressed and has muscles when he is undressed. Not only have his injuries healed, but his ability to withstand blows has also increased dramatically. If he takes Morgan's axe again, despite being unable to withstand it head-on, he will definitely not be as embarrassed as before. Today, his swordsmanship is about to be upgraded to level 5. According to the system, this is a qualitative change that will bring him unexpected improvements. The group's training for the day ended quickly, and Gawain also gained 24 points of swordsmanship and 30 points of physique experience as he wished. Swordsmanship, level 4, 793 800, greater than swordsmanship, level 5, 17 1600. The next moment, a completely new feeling appeared in Gawain's hand, as if the sword he was holding was not a dead object but a part of his body. Countless understandings of swordsmanship and various complex sword moves flashed before his eyes, but he completely understood and digested them in an instant and was able to use them immediately in battle. Gawain subconsciously raised his hand and casually slashed the sword across the stone wall in front of him. Whoosh! After a crisp sound, The huge stone wall with a diameter of more than 10 meters broke directly in the middle. The cut surface is neat, like a mirror. Gawain's eyes widened instantly. This is amazing. Just one level can bring such an improvement? My swordsmanship at level 4 can also cut through stones, but not to this extent. With this swordsmanship, my combat power has at least doubled. Coupled with the improvement in my physique, my combat power on paper has at least tripled compared to when I first came here. If I face Morgan again, I am confident that I can kill him within 3 moves. Gawain recalled the details of his fight with Morgan and finally made this judgment. But in the next moment, the familiar system prompt sounded again. It is detected that the host's swordsmanship has been improved to level 5. You can choose one of the following branch abilities: Breath of all things, Flying Blade, or Swiftness. Chapter 4, Amazing Improvement, More Surprises. This is the choice the system says will determine my future. Hearing the prompt in his mind, Gawain quickly came back to his senses with a look of surprise on his face. Of the 3 advanced abilities that were presented to Gawain at the same time, the best choice was, of course, to take them all, but the actual situation obviously did not allow it. For a moment, he hesitated. After all, it concerns the improvement of his future combat capability, and it may even be his first transformation at his stage, so he cannot be careless. He can understand the functions of the 3 abilities just by looking at their literal meanings. Breath of all things increases the power of sword strikes, as Zoro demonstrated when he fought Mr. 1, Das Bones, in Alabasta. Even a body of steel can be cut at will. The flying blade refers to the flying slash, which is the mainstream long-range method of the swordsman at the late stage. If used well, it can also cut off mountains and even islands with one sword like hawk eyes. Then Gawain focused on the last option, which was speed. The last part, swiftness, is undoubtedly to improve the speed of one's own attack. In a battle, even if it is just a hair's breadth faster, it is often enough to decide the outcome, or even life or death. After pondering for a moment, Gawain finally focused his attention on swiftness. The opponents I'm facing now don't have armament hockey yet, and those devil fruit users that can significantly increase physical strength are not in the East Blue. Although Breath of all things is useful in high-intensity combat, it is far from being that helpful to me right now. The same goes for Flying Blade. This is a late-stage skill. The flying slash is no match for a sword slash. When I need a long-range attack, I can just use a cannon or gun. How can I be called a master if I have a sword but don't use it? It seems that the biggest help to me right now is swiftness. Thinking of this, Gawain no longer hesitated and directly chose swiftness, and the system panel in front of him disappeared immediately. His body began to heat up the next moment. The high temperature made his skin red, and even scorching steam rose around his body. His fingers became longer and stronger, and the muscles all over his body began to grow again. His entire body underwent a transformation, growing towards a more perfect, more precise, and more powerful direction. After several seconds, Gawain's body temperature slowly returned to normal. He exhaled a puff of white smoke and slowly opened his eyes. But what he saw made him gasp. This is... Everything slowed down in his eyes. The falling leaves in the distance, the surging waves on the beach, and even the branches swaying in the wind all moved incredibly slowly as if he were watching a slow-motion video. He could even see a flying mosquito passing by in front of his eyes. From the fluttering of its wings to the trajectory of its flight, everything was clear. It's not that the world has become slower but that my perception has become sharper. Gawain swings his sword instinctively. Whoosh! The sharp blade flashed a silver light, and the 3 actions of drawing the sword, taking it out, and sheathing it were completed almost instantly. By the time Gawain reacted, the mosquito in the air had already been split in half, and the insect's body circled and landed on the ground, with its transparent wings broken in the middle and blown away by the wind. Gawain looked at the sword in his hand, his pupils couldn't help shrinking. I did this too fast. It was so fast that I didn't even have time to react, and everything was over. Such a fast attack. Gawain once again chose Morgan for comparison, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. I can chop off his head with one sword right now. The improvement brought about by the rapid speed can almost be said to be in all aspects. From nerve reflex speed to perception ability to the instinct to draw the sword, everything is for the purpose of obtaining a faster sword speed. From drawing the sword to killing the flying mosquito and then putting the sword back into the sheath, the whole process took less than 0.2 seconds. This speed even exceeded the theoretical limit of humans in Gawain's previous life. But he could feel that this was not the limit of his body. After becoming more familiar with his body, he would be able to do it even faster. With the bonus of swiftness, Gawain's sword swinging speed became extremely exaggerated. As long as he can break through the defense, a little speed can make the difference between life and death. Gawain threw a stone into the air, and the sword in his hand danced in the air. When the stone fell to the ground, It broke into dozens of pieces, and the cross-section of each small piece was extremely smooth. Before the rocks fell to the ground, I sliced it 13 times. This speed is already as fast as a light rifle, which is basically enough to deal with the battle in the East Blue. Gawain was in high spirits. The uneasiness after the transmigration was finally alleviated due to his own growth of strength. He is also looking forward to the improvements that the system can bring to him. If I can gain an entry every time my skill level increases by 5, then as long as my swordsmanship reaches level 10, I will be able to gain the next entry. Wrong. Physique is about to reach level 5. As long as the crew on the ship maintain this growth rate, my physique will meet the conditions for the upgrade in half a month at most. What would be the branch ability in terms of physique? Many guesses popped up in Gawain's mind, but they were just his guesses. Fortunately, as long as they can snatch the boat from Morgan and find a place for these leaks to practice for 10 days or half a month, his physique's experience will be enough. Gawain suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind and began to familiarize himself with his rapidly increasing speed more seriously. He practiced swordsmanship skills in his mind and even used Morgan as an imaginary enemy. Time passed, and soon, it was the second half of the night. Gawain, who was basically familiar with his body, was sweating. He simply took off his shirt, revealing the well-defined muscles on his upper body. Combined with his height of over 2 meters, which brought about a good head-to-body ratio, his whole body looked like an ancient Greek sculpture, full of beauty. The appearance of this body is that of Gawain in the Knights of the Round Table, one of the prototypes of the Prince Charming. Naturally, he is extremely handsome, so it is no wonder the princess from the kingdom of Goa could not control herself. Gawain imitated a well-known hairspray artist in the second dimension and pressed all the loose hair on his forehead onto the back of his head, revealing his delicate and three-dimensional facial features. Compared with his original gentle and elegant image, he looked a bit more aggressive. Then he packed up a little and walked towards the cave. The pirate ship was severely damaged and could no longer be repaired. Gawain simply asked his men to dismantle the cannons on the ship and transfer the supplies and ammunition to this hidden cave. After making sure the shells were moisture-proof, he used it as a temporary base. Not long. The cave is right in front of him. At this time, most of the pirates had already rested, and the snoring in the cave was deafening. Even the night watchmen sat back-to-back in front of the fire, closed their eyes, and took a light nap. After taking a quick glance, Gawain frowned slightly. All the crew members were here except those who stayed near the ship. Only Jamila was not there. Normally, a wounded person should stay here and be treated by the ship's doctor. Guarding the boat? That shouldn't be the case. With sufficient manpower, how could we let a wounded soldier guard the ship? At the same time, at the estuary, a pirate ship with a broken mast was quietly anchored here. Whether it is the dense charred marks on the hull or the almost completely cracked keel, both indicate that the ship is no longer able to continue sailing. Jamila jumped down from the deck quietly and looked around. After making sure that there was no one around, he slowly took off the seagull pendant from his chest. He cracked it open, revealing a tiny den mushi hidden inside. This is Private Jamila, reporting the location of White Knight Gawain, which is about 15 kilometers from the 16th branch. Chapter 5, The Traitor and the Marines Attack Gladder. A long sword pressed on Jamila's shoulder, causing him to swallow back the next words. An urging voice came from the micro den mushi, but it stopped after a few breaths. It was obvious that the person on the other side also realized that Jamila might have been exposed. Gawain glanced at the den mushi in Jamila's hand and said coldly, "Am I not good to you?" Jamila seemed to accept his fate, put down the den mushi in his hand, and lowered his eyes. "You're very kind to me. But what you are doing now makes me very disappointed. Captain, do you know how many civilians die every year from pirates? Did I attack civilians? But you're a pirate. So what?" Gawain sneered, "Even if you haven't been with me for long, you should know that, apart from Lancer and the surrendered captives, almost all the people on this ship are civilians who have to go to sea because they can't pay taxes. Should they die?" Jamila was speechless for a moment, and a hint of regret flashed in his eyes. Gawain did not give him a chance and cut off his head with one slash. Bang! The headless corpse slowly fell to the ground, blood gushed out from the carotid artery and soon gathered into a pool on the ground. Gawain looked at the corpse in front of him, his heart not wavering at all. Jamila may have difficulties, but he had already made his choice when he betrayed him. Just as Gawain was about to turn around and leave, a low, hoarse voice suddenly came from the miniature den mushi on the ground. "Even if there is no news from Jamila, I know where you are, and I will crush your bones piece by piece." The other party's voice was filled with absolute confidence as if he was stating a fact. Gawain could tell that the owner of the voice was Morgan, who had severely injured his predecessor and was also the Marine lieutenant who was now chasing him. If his predecessor were here, he would probably have already started planning to escape, But the current Gawain is no longer the previous one. He looked at the bloody sword in his hand, and a ferocious look flashed in his eyes. Then I'll wait for you here. After saying that, Gawain stepped on the den mushy and crashed it into pieces. Warm blood splattered on the ground and landed everywhere. The next morning, Jamila's body was discovered by the crew, and information about him being an undercover agent from the Marines gradually spread. The pirate group was in a panic for a while. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that they had been working hard on their training during this period and had indeed made great progress compared to the past. But there is still an insurmountable gap between them and the elite of the Marines, let alone Morgan. What's more, the Marines have far more sophisticated equipment than theirs, making this battle even more impossible to fight. In just a few minutes, some people had a mental breakdown and were crying loudly on the beach. Are the Marines coming? Damn it! A frightened pirate cursed inwardly and looked towards the beach, but in the end, he only saw a stranded ship. The hull was covered with scars, and the flag was still fluttering on the broken mast. Several carrion vultures circled in the sky, looking around with sharp eyes. It finally slowly landed beside Jamila's body and greedily put its head into the abdominal cavity to peck at the soft internal organs. The horrifying scene almost made the pirates who arrived here collapse. The mast is broken, and the keel is almost completely cracked. This ship can no longer sail. Is this really no way out for us? No. It's not too late to build a ship now. As long as we can reach the nearby islands. The nearest island is hundreds of miles away. Even if the ship can withstand the wind and waves, we can't stop the bloodthirsty Sea Kings. Gawain did not hesitate to shatter everyone's last glimmer of hope and draw their attention. Gawain, who killed Lancer with one sword and showed unprecedented strength, once brought them hope, but now everyone only felt powerless. During this period of time, Gawain devoted himself to teaching the crew members swordsmanship. Now that his injuries had barely healed, in the eyes of everyone, it was good enough that he could maintain his original fighting strength. But even when he was in his peak condition, he had no choice but to die when facing Morgan. Now, he's no match at all. Even you, Captain, cannot compete with Morgan. A pirate shook his head in disappointment, and everyone else had the same attitude. Gawain said nothing upon seeing this but walked silently to the side of the pirate ship, and the long sword at his waist instantly flashed a cold light in the air. Boom! After a sharp roar, a cloud of dust rose on the beach. Gawain's voice came out from the smoke and dust slowly, "Leave Morgan to me. You just need to practice hard before they arrive and increase your chances of survival as much as possible. This is not for me, but for yourself." As the sound landed, the smoke and dust gradually dissipated. Everyone also saw the scene clearly in the distance, leaving them shocked and speechless. This was because the pirate ship, which was tens of meters long, had now been neatly broken into two parts in the middle, and everything inside, including the keel, had been completely cut into two. Cut the ship with one sword? In their opinion, only the monsters active on the Grand Line can achieve such existence. At least the original Gawain could never do it. Is the captain so powerful? No. The captain's strength had never been this strong before. He has become stronger during this period of time. We all guessed wrong. He must have been working hard when no one knew about it. He is the hardest working person in the pirate group. Gawain was slightly stunned when he heard this, his face turned red, but he did not explain. After all, the existence of the system was his biggest secret, and thinking this way would save them a lot of trouble. The surrounding pirates gradually became excited. With this kind of swordsmanship, I can even fight against Morgan. The pirate who had just shouted about building a ship to escape looked at the chopped-off pirate ship, and his eyes lit up again. The crowd, which had been gradually becoming agitated, suddenly quieted down and looked at Gawain with hope. Now go back and practice. Yes. At this moment, Gawain's prestige in everyone's hearts increased again, almost to an insurmountable level. They picked up their swords and returned to their previous state of hard work, their bodies instinctively practicing every move they had learned from Gawain. They even replaced the sticks and started practicing against each other. Gawain looked at the people in front of him who had regained their faith, and suddenly, a sense of enlightenment arose in his heart. In the manga, Mori attempted to become the king of the pirates by relying on the power of his companions, which was completely wrong. This is putting the cart before the horse. Only when the captain himself is strong enough to repel all invading enemies can he unite the hearts of the pirates and create an invincible pirate group. Time quickly passed, and it was already late at night. In Gawain's mind, the familiar system prompt sound came again: swordsmanship, level 5, 11,600, greater than swordsmanship, level 5, 58,600, physique, level 4, 366,800, greater than physique, level 4, 418,800. The swordsmanship and physique's experience that Gawain gained that day doubled compared to before. In the following few days, the experience points provided by everyone who was training like crazy basically remained around this level. There are only less than 100 experience points left for upgrading the physique. A few days later, late at night. The moon is high in the sky is full of stars, and the salty sea breeze brings a hint of coolness. After finishing their practice, everyone was preparing to return to the mountains to rest. When they looked up, they saw red fireballs lighting up the entire night sky and countless shells falling on this deserted island like meteors. Boom. 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 After a series of explosions, a raging fire broke out in the forest. The heat wave rolled in, and the originally cool sea breeze now felt like a burning knife licking everyone's skin. The Marines are coming. Under the night, a huge warship stood quietly on the sea, like a beast with its claws spread out. A burly man stood on the bow, holding an axe. If it's not Morgan, then who else could it be? Chapter 6, 1/ At this time, Morgan had not yet experienced the disastrous defeat at Kiro's hands. His chin was still made of flesh, and his arms had not been replaced with giant axe-shaped prosthetic limbs. His overall aura was far more powerful than his later appearance. It is because his mentality, will, and belief are now at the peak of his life, and the power born from it is even stronger. Morgan looked out into the distance. There were flames on the deserted island. A Marine in charge of reconnaissance hurried to Morgan's side, saluted, and began to report the situation. A pirate ship was found in a bay on the island. Judging from the flag, it is undoubtedly from the White Knight pirate. But the strange thing is that the ship broke in the middle, and the cut surface was extremely smooth. It didn't seem to be formed naturally, but more like it was man-made. Morgan was slightly stunned, raised the telescope in his hand, and looked at the bay in the distance. As the scouts reported, a pirate ship that had been divided into two was stranded on the beach. Morgan had seen scenes like this before. That was a few years ago, when Garp returned to the East Blue to wipe out the surrounding pirates. The silent man named Boggart, who has always followed Vice Admiral Garp. At that time, everyone thought he was just Garp's follower. Everyone fell silent until he cut a pirate ship in half with one sword, and the powerful flying slash almost cut the sea apart. How could someone who could stay by Garp's side for decades be just an unknown person? The slash Boggart made back then was almost identical to the one in front of him. Therefore, with just one glance, Morgan could tell that the person who caused this must be a skilled swordsman. White Knight Gawain, did it? No, a swordsman who can leave such neat cuts is considered a top figure even on the Grand Line. I know Gawain's strength well. He definitely can't do this. Did he encounter other pirates? Morgan frowned slightly and became wary of the mysterious man who made the move. A strong man who could cut a ship in half with one slash should not be an unknown person in the East Blue. Even in his impression, only a few Marines from the headquarters could do it. But it looks like he has fought against a White Knight pirate before. Hey, a bunch of unlucky guys. Thinking of this, Morgan's confidence increased. In his impression, Gawain was not his opponent. Now they are attacked by a mysterious, strong man again. Without the need for any verification, he knew that the other party must have suffered heavy losses. The ship is the best evidence. Several more rounds of artillery fire fell from the warships, and the red meteors in the sky completely ignited the entire island. Flames shot up into the sky, and other than that, there was no other sound in the forest. Seeing that half of the ship's shells had been used up, Morgan stopped the artillery fire. He decided to take Gawain's head himself. Looking at the Marines rubbing their hands in preparation, Morgan grinned and said, "Everyone, tonight is our night to make achievements. For justice." When Morgan's firm voice fell, the emotions of the Marines were completely ignited, and some even trembled with excitement. This was not the first time they had fought against a White Knight pirate. Every time before, they had beaten the other party into fleeing in panic, and the only price they paid was a few minor injuries. And now Gawain is on the island. He is a living, meritorious service and a walking 50 million belly. It's not just the Marines that offered a bounty on Gawain's head. The bounty offered by the Kingdom of Goa's royal family in the underworld has already reached 50 million. As long as we can capture him, everything will belong to us. Besides, we are enforcing justice. Absolute justice. The belief in justice dispelled the last bit of concern of these Marines. The swords and ammunition wrapped in wax paper in their hands brought them unprecedented confidence and made them truly cold-blooded executioners. Everyone seemed to see themselves achieving success. "Kill!" Morgan shouted loudly, then jumped off the warship first and rushed towards the cave. Then, a group of Marines followed closely behind him with fanatical looks on their faces. Everyone moved quickly, with Morgan taking the lead. In just a few minutes, they had covered a distance of nearly 1,000 meters. Soon, Gawain, holding a long sword, led dozens of pirates and appeared in Morgan's sight. He looked at the fanatical Marines in front of him with an indifferent expression. He just feels that the eyes of these people are no different from his previous deputy captain, who died at his hand. They are all equally fanatical and greedy. The battle between Marines and pirates also broke out at this moment. Suddenly, a burst of intensive gunfire was heard on the deserted island, and within a few breaths, several corpses were left on both sides. Even those on Gawain's ship who had shrunk back in fear forgot what fear was because of the adrenaline. They raise their sword and gun in their hand and fight with the enemy, creating a bloody and hideous battlefield. For the Marines, this war is for fame, profit, and a stepping stone to promotion, while the pirates are fighting purely for survival. Bang! 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 Amidst the intensive gunfire, Gawain swung his sword to cut off several bullets that were flying towards him. Then he looked up at Morgan, who was also motionless in the distance, with a faint smile on his face. Rather than saying "You're a Marine, you're more like my colleague. A sharp-tongued little devil." Morgan grinned and looked at Gawain in front of him. He didn't want to say anything more to him. He stomped his feet hard, almost crushing the ground, and turned into a sharp arrow and rushed towards Gawain. At the same time, the axe in his hand swept across, bursting out with terrifying force. Even if this blow hit the rock, it could easily crush it. He had used his strength to suppress Gawain several times before, and he didn't think the result would be different if he tried it again this time. There are indeed many people in this ocean who can be reborn within a month. Devil fruits, technological transformation, and Haki awakening can all enhance a person's combat effectiveness in a very short period of time. But Gawain is obviously not among them. The next moment, boom! The violent force shattered the rocks on the ground, but Morgan frowned slightly. "I miss?" "No, you are too slow." Gawain's teasing voice rang in Morgan's ears, and the latter's vest was instantly soaked with cold sweat. The ship that was stranded on the beach for no reason appeared in Morgan's eyes again. The next moment, a bone-chilling murderous intent came from Morgan's back, almost completely freezing the surrounding air. At this moment, unspeakable fear rose in Morgan's heart. A guess that he had rejected appeared in Morgan's mind again, causing his pupils to tremble. "You cut off that ship. That's impossible." Only mediocre people would say it's impossible, but strong people will find a solution. "This is the insurmountable gap between you and me." Gawain looked at Morgan with little interest. This man, who had once suffocated him, could no longer pose a threat to him. Then he said calmly while looking at him, "I will kill you with one sword and sever the cause and effect with the past." "I." Before Morgan could finish his words, he felt a chill on his neck. When he looked back, Gawain had disappeared. After spinning for a while, a headless body appeared before his eyes. "Is that me?" A final thought flashed through Morgan's mind before he fell into darkness. Chapter 7, Gawain's career planning. Morgan is dead, those who surrender will not be killed. Gawain lifted Morgan's head with a sword. His voice was not loud, but it made the two sides that were fighting stop at the same time. The originally fanatical Marines felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar the moment they saw Morgan's headless body. The desire that had just been aroused by Morgan's few words was instantly dissipated. The scene before them was so different from what they had expected. Lieutenant Morgan died? One Marine looked pale, and if it weren't for the knife wound on his arm, he would have almost thought he was having a nightmare. "Are you kidding me? How can we bow down to pirates?" Whoosh! Before he could finish his words, Gawain chopped off his head with a sword, and blood splattered everywhere, landing on the surrounding Marines. Warm, salty, and tastes like iron. This is not a dream, The Marines, who were originally full of confidence and wanted to establish their achievements by taking Gawain's head, were now trembling with fear. After all, if even Morgan is no match for Gawain, what is the point of their resistance? Ding! With the sound of metal falling to the ground, the Marines present gave up resistance and squatted on the spot. The fighting on the island stopped. It was not until Gawain ordered his crew to tie up the Marines that the pirates came to their senses. They looked at Morgan's body and then at Gawain, whose clothes were spotless. There seemed to be a flame burning in their pupils. "Captain, he actually really defeated Morgan? Beat? This is an instant kill." A man wearing the hat looked at Morgan's headless body, and then he reached out and touched his neck, his eyes full of awe. "I'm afraid the captain will become famous in the East Blue this time. Even the monsters in the Grand Line may not be a match for the captain. I have this feeling that the East Blue cannot contain him. No, it should be that the East Blue cannot accommodate him." Lancer's incident completely transformed him. Whether it's his mentality, strength, or will, it's completely different from before. It's like he's become a completely different person. The pirates present looked at Gawain's back, and in addition to awe, there was also a confidence that they had never had before in their eyes. With Morgan's defeat, the situation on the island was quickly brought under control. The Marines who followed Morgan to the island were all gathered together with their hands tied. The warships left on the sea, together with the Marines left on it, were easily captured by Gawain. By the time the turmoil on the island was quelled, the sun had already risen in the sky. Gawain stood on the deck of the warship with the captured Marines in front of him. "Captain, what do we do with these people?" The hooded helmsman walked up to Gawain and asked respectfully. After Lancer's death, he became Gawain's temporary deputy captain, and his abilities were quite outstanding in the pirate group. Gawain glanced at the captives, and after a moment's silence, he spoke, "Leave them on the island." "Captain, these people have killed many of our brothers. Are you just going to let them go?" The helmsman retorted subconsciously. "Are you teaching me how to do things? I don't dare." The helmsman knelt down hurriedly, his eyes full of fear. Only then did he realize that the person in front of him was no longer the kind-hearted knight he used to be but the real pirate Gawain. The man who had chased and beaten them couldn't even survive a single move from Gawain. During this month, Gawain spent most of his time instructing them in their practice, which shows that Gawain had been hiding his strength all along. He is not weak, he just has no intention of fighting. It was them and the Marines who killed the kindness and created this monster together. For a while, countless speculations flashed through the helmsman's mind. The more he thought about it, the more difficult it was for him to suppress his fear of Gawain. "That's good to know." Gawain spoke indifferently, glanced at the helmsman, and then looked at the prisoners on the deck. Killing the enemy and torturing prisoners in battle are two different things. The former can still be eased, but the latter is a complete fight to the death. He wasn't ready to have a complete falling out with the Marines, at least not yet. Looking at the world of pirates, except for extreme examples like Hawkeye's, big pirates will almost inevitably end up taking the path of splitting the land and becoming king. Crocodile occupy Alabasta, Doflamingo owns Dressrosa, and the four emperors of the New World, Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom, are kings in the true sense, ruling over a large area of land. Even Red Hair has gathered a large fleet of his own. There is only one reason why these big pirates all chose this mode of operation: stability. Relying solely on plundering for a living and living from hunger to fullness was okay in the early stages of starting a business. If they still do this in the late stage, they are either really stupid or they are a team like the Straw Hat Pirates, which are more like adventurers than pirates. But even in this situation, the Straw Hat Pirates have gathered a large number of fans. From Fishman Island to Wano Country, these places with the Straw Hat flag have actually become the Straw Hat Pirates' sphere of influence, regardless of whether they have such intentions or not. For Gawain, who holds the Helm of Destiny system, the more stable his pirate group is, the faster his subordinates can develop, and the faster he himself can grow. If he wants to build a stable force and achieve a virtuous cycle while at the same time avoiding the constant harassment from the ubiquitous Marines. Either he's one of the four emperors who is so strong that the Marine headquarters has to think twice before taking action, or he is one of the 7 warlords of the sea who has obtained a plundering license from the world government. Therefore, after understanding this, Gawain's first goal was to surrender first, then rebel. As for how to become a warlord, Blackbeard and Ace have already given 2 examples. Either he relies on his power to bring down one of the 7 warlords of the sea, or he has someone protecting him from above, then it will naturally be his turn. Or he could wait for a vacancy among the 7 warlords of the sea and then recommend himself. Both approaches have their merits and disadvantages, but the prerequisite is that one's own strength is strong enough. Gawain, who has not even left the East Blue, obviously does not have this condition, but this does not prevent him from putting the plan of joining the 7 warlords of the sea on his schedule. But the top priority now is still to improve his strength as quickly as possible. After leaving the captives on the island and performing a simple inspection on the ship to confirm that there were no problems, Gawain led his crew to set off in the direction indicated by the nautical chart to a nearby town for a wave of supplies. Gawain did not change the naval flag on the warship. After all, if you want to enter an ordinary city for supplies or do something, this flag is much more useful than the pirate flag. A few days later, at the Marines' East Blue Branch base, the conference room was filled with smoke, and the atmosphere was depressing and solemn. The Marine officers from various branch bases in East Blue are all gathered here at this moment, looking at the 2 bounties on the table with serious expressions. One of them was wearing an orange fur hat, had freckles on his face, and had a sunny smile. The other one was wearing black leather armor, had a handsome face, a tall stature, and even his posture was extremely elegant, like a knight who walked out of a storybook. Lieutenant Commander Branyu stood in front of everyone, his tone extremely serious. "Everyone. The situation in the East Blue is more serious than we imagined. Logia Devil Fruit user, Fire Fist, Ace wreaked havoc at the 151st branch base, causing numerous casualties. White Knight Gawain even killed Lieutenant Morgan. According to the Marines present, Gawain only struck once from beginning to end. The bounty for these two people needs to be redrafted. Chapter 8, Skyrocketing Bounty. This time, the bounty will be drawn up directly by the headquarters. After all, the threat these two people display is not at the same level as the other pirates in the East Blue. You have to know that the East Blue is known as the most peaceful sea in the world. The average bounty for pirates is less than 5 million. Even the most threatening Arlong pirates, their captain, only have a bounty of 20 million belly. But it is foreseeable that the new bounties on Firefist Ace and White Knight Goblin will definitely be higher than this number. This is an insult to the East Blue, and it is also a denial of the abilities of everyone present here. As Branew's voice fell, the faces of all the officers in the room became gloomy. It was because Branew's words were almost a slap in their faces, but after all, the problem occurred in the sea area under their responsibility, so even if they wanted to refute, they didn't have the confidence. But someone couldn't swallow this. To the left of Branew, the commander of the 16th branch, who looked like a mouse, said in a weird tone, after all, he is an experienced Marine from headquarters, so he is straightforward in what he says and does. His words attracted the attention of the people around him. Branew glanced at him and frowned slightly but was too lazy to explain anything. Branew turned around and continued, the people in headquarters, especially the one from the East Blue, will pay close attention to this matter. Please be careful in what you say and do. From the East Blue. Vice Admiral Garp? Nezami blurted out, and then his pupils shrunk sharply. Everyone present suddenly sat up straight and looked at Branew with serious faces. If this news is true, it means that Vice Admiral Garp may be planning to return to the East Blue to suppress the pirates. And every suppression of pirates also means cleansing the East Blue Marines, from top to bottom, from inside to outside, to eliminate the insects that parasite the flesh and blood of the Marines and replace them with new blood. It is foreseeable that countless people will fall because of this. If this is true, then we must prepare in advance. The pirates around in the sea need to be cleared out, and the pests inside also need to be thoroughly investigated. Everyone was filled with awe. Nezami was already sweating profusely at this point, and by the time the meeting was over, his vest was already wet. East Blue, on the sea. The wind is light, and the waves are slow. Seabirds flew over the sea, causing sea beasts hiding under the water to jump out of the water and then sink back into the sea. The size of the buildings, which are often tens of meters long, gives off a sense of unreality. It also made Goblin realize that he was no longer in the peaceful world of his previous life but in the world of One Piece. Plunder, violence, and chaos are the eternal themes of this ocean. The strong men who reached the top kept changing, but there were always new people sailing out to sea, and now Goblin became one of them. To be honest, if there is a choice, the most ideal start in the world of One Piece would be to be one of the Celestial Dragons or the Marines. There are stable promotion channels, and he can unlock the 6 styles of the Marines by following the routine promotions. Even the channels to obtain devil fruits are far more numerous than those of pirates. Goblin, who had just killed Morgan and whose name was on the wanted list, naturally had no chance of joining the Marines. Then, the only option is to stick to the path of being a pirate. Only powerful strength can give you a foothold in this world. Goblin murmured. But at this moment, a news COO wearing a hat flew from a distance. After circling the warship several times, the news COO dropped a newspaper on the deck and slowly flew away. The pirate guarding the deck picked up the newspaper, but before he opened it, a stack of bounty sandwiched between the newspapers fell to the ground. The pirate was about to pick up the bounty when he saw Goblin's photo. However, the number marked below the photo was not the 8 million he remembered. The pirate realized what was happening and suddenly took a breath. 1, 10, 100, 1,000. 4, 4, 4. Why are you stuttering? The pirate standing next to him snatched the bounty but was also shocked by Goblin's exaggerated bounty because the number directly broke the bounty ceiling of the East Blue in recent years. White Knight Goblin, bounty. 48 million belly? How much? Everyone was attracted by his voice and gathered around. Seeing the bounty on Goblin increase 6-fold, they were so shocked that they turned completely speechless for a moment. They were stunned for more than 10 seconds before they realized what was happening and exclaimed in surprise. 48 million? Now we know, the captain is going to become famous in the East Blue. You should know that before this, the highest bounty in the East Blue was only 20 million belly. We just defeated Morgan, and the next one we have to face is the East Blue's entire Marines? Some people looked pale and felt that the future was dark. The amount of the bounty also reflects the importance the Marines attach to it. 48 million is the highest bounty ever offered in the East Blue in the past decade or so. It is not difficult to imagine that Goblin will face pursuit and interception by the Marines next. The man was a little timid for a moment but was mercilessly ridiculed by his companions. Are you stupid? We can't turn back now. The more famous the captain is, the safer we will be. Besides, who can say that was the captain's full strength on the island before? Gawain naturally noticed the different opinions of the crowd. He pushed away the pirates who were surrounding the edge, and the pirate holding the newspaper handed over the bounty sensibly. Looking at the skyrocketing number on the bounty, Gawain's mouth curled up slightly. In his opinion, there should be no higher bounty than him in the East Blue, and the bounty and the title would be beneficial to his future plans. Gawain looked at his own bounty, then put it aside and turned to look through several other bounty warrants. Hero of 100 plans, 14 million belly. Jinnah Man Demon, 11 million belly. Sawtooth Long, 20 million belly. Gawain's hand paused slightly. Just because a familiar face appeared in front of him. Although the man in the photo looked much younger than he remembered. But he could recognize him at a glance, whether it was the freckles on his face or the uniquely shaped hat. The man on the bounty was the only living descendant of the king of the pirates, Gul D. Roger. Portgas D. Ace, nicknamed Fire Fist, has a bounty of 50 million belly. Even higher than Gawain. The original limit on bounty at the East Blue was exceeded by the two of them one after another. Gawain, however, remembered something else. He raised his hand and touched his chin, his eyes shining. Ace's talent should be far above these ordinary pirates. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to reach the level of being the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates' 2nd Division in just a few years and even be able to compete with an admiral-level marine like Okiji for a short period of time. If I can get him on board, my growth rate will have a qualitative leap. But Logia users are hard to deal with without armament hockey. Zoro has no fixed place to stay, and his whereabouts are secretive and hard to find. So my only choice now is Verity, the ocean-going restaurant. As Gawain thought about this, he gradually came up with a plan in his mind. But at this moment, a system prompt sounded in his mind again. Congratulations on unlocking the badge, Rising Fame. You can check the potential ability of your crew. Chapter 9, New Badge and Physiques Improvement to check the potential capabilities of the crew? Gawain was slightly stunned, then turned to look at the pirate beside him. A new panel appeared in front of him. Name, Avain, Potential, Iron, Rating, Iron, a small fry who has learned basic swordsmanship. Then Gawain turned his attention to the other pirates, and the system screen switched, displaying their potential and system scores in real time. Without exception, they are all iron. Gawain was not surprised by this result. After all, according to the system standards, even when his swordsmanship awakened the swiftness attribute and his physique improved by 1 level, his rating was still iron. Even if the pirates on the ship were tied together, they might not be a match for Gawain. The gap between them was even bigger than that between dogs. That means I can directly check the potential of the crew members and select the talents I need? Gawain realized the correct usage of this badge. However, it is not necessary for the time being, after all, he is still at sea. I can go and see if there are any other useful leaks in the East Blue besides those 3 people. A strong person with top talent can reach the pinnacle within a few years. It also shows that the gap between people is greater than that between dogs. Gawain shook his head, then checked the potential of the pirates present one by one, and finally could only helplessly confirm that all the pirates on this ship were small fry. But even if they are just small fish, if their numbers increase, they will become a piece of leak that cannot be ignored. Besides, Gawain's physique has reached the brink of a breakthrough. He had a hunch that as long as his physical strength improved further, his combat power would undergo a transformation, and he would be able to truly get rid of the rating of iron and trash. Gawain left behind a small group of people to control the ship's navigation and gather intelligence nearby, and then gathered the rest of the crew on the deck to continue teaching them swordsmanship. Naturally, no one had any opinion on this, nor did they dare to have any opinion. Now, Gawain has established absolute prestige in their hearts, and no one on the ship dares to resist. After all, the body of the last person who resisted had been eaten clean by the fish. Hey! Ha! On deck, angry roars resounded, accompanied by the sound of metal clashing. Under the scorching sun, everyone started their rigorous training again. Time flies, the sun sets, and the moon rises. There were gusts of cool air blowing over the sea, and the exhausted pirates just lay down on the deck, letting the sea breeze blow away their fatigue. Gawain stood aside and nodded with satisfaction. This was the greatest value these people had for him. If they can't even perform the most basic functions of an experience pack, bringing them along would be more of a burden than a help. At the end of practice, Gawain once again gained 12 points of physique experience and 15 points of swordsmanship experience. Physique, level 4, 791 800, greater than physique, level 5, 1600, swordsmanship, level 5, 803 1600, greater than swordsmanship, level 5, 818 1600, his physique, which was already close to its limit, broke through directly to level 5. Gawain felt the changes in his body instantly. The muscles under the leather armor began to fill up visibly, and even the bones in his body began to make crackling sounds like frying beans. That is the sound of bones pressing against each other as they grow rapidly. In just a few seconds, Gawain's figure grew up a bit, and his originally loose leather armor became a tight style, and his trouser legs also exposed his ankles. My body became stronger. My strength has increased by at least 50%. I haven't tested my ability to withstand blows yet, but it is undoubtedly much stronger than before. I just don't know what it will be like to withstand Morgan's axe now. Gawain smiled faintly, then raised his hand and shook it. Bang! The air exploded, attracting the attention of the surrounding crew. Huh? Has the captain's body shape changed? I remember that he wasn't this tall before. One of the pirates rubbed his eyes and felt that Gawain looked a little strange, as if something had changed. The sense of oppression from the captain is stronger, even stronger than when he killed Morgan before. An illusion? The pirate with a mohawk patted his shoulder and said weakly, I guess you admire the captain too much. Yeah? That's it. The people who had barely recovered their strength began to chat idly. Gawain walked towards the captain's room in silence because the changes before him were just appetizers, and greater improvements were yet to come. Bang! After closing the door of the captain's room and locking it, Gawain checked the information in his mind. It is detected that the host's physique has been improved to level 5. You can choose one of the following branch abilities: strength, agility, durability, and equilibrium. After a brief thought, Gawain set his sights on the last option. These 4 branch abilities undoubtedly represent 4 ways of adding points: extreme strength, agility, and durability, while equilibrium is adding points among the 3 attributes. But reality is not a game after all. If the choice is too extreme, it is very likely that other attributes cannot keep up and fail to play the original role. Strong power requires an equally strong physique to support it. Super fast speed without corresponding power to break the opponent's defense is just scraping, and simply piling up durability is just a pure sandbag. Besides, in the world of One Piece, the strong ones who can reach the top of the pyramid are all those who have reached the extreme in durability, strength, and speed. The Marines have Garp and Sengoku, and the pirates have Kaido and Whitebeard. Their attributes are balanced, and there are no obvious shortcomings. Even if he adds points evenly, it may lead to a situation in the later stage where it seems that he has everything he wants, but in fact, he has nothing. But Gawain is confident that with the efforts of his subordinates, he can even create a hexagonal warrior. I choose equilibrium. The next moment, Gawain's body heated up again, and countless blood as hot as lava gushed out of his heart and flowed through every muscle in his body. The burning pain from inside out made Gawain break out in a cold sweat. He bent over, his face flushed, and he almost bit his gums until they bled. Along with the severe pain in his body, Gawain's body began to undergo amazing changes. Every pore on his body's surface began to secrete fishy-smelling sweat, but before it could flow down, it was dried up by the high body temperature. After the transformation was over, Gawain was completely exhausted and lay on his back on the ground, gasping for breath. After a few seconds, when Gawain came to his senses, he discovered that there was a thick layer of dirt on his skin, which cracked with a slight touch, revealing the new skin inside. It should be considered a kind of cleansing of the tendons and marrow, right? Gawain smiled slightly, and then he felt the changes in his body. My body is so light. It's like living in chains and suddenly having them removed. Every part of my body feels so relaxed. He moved his body slightly and felt that every cell was emitting vigorous vitality. Even the hidden injuries left by his predecessor's swordsmanship training when he was young were completely healed. This body seemed to have returned to its most primitive and authentic state. Since I can check other people's potential, can I also check my own? Chapter 10, Flying Slash and System Limitations. Do what you say. Gawain activated the badge ability again. When he focused his gaze on himself, the familiar light blue screen appeared before his eyes again. Name, Gawain. Potential, silver. Rating, iron. A leader among the small fish, but still a small fish with untapped potential, silver level potential. My physique has been raised to level 5, and the equilibrium attribute has been awakened, making my body undergo a transformation. Even the silver level potential may be the result of this transformation, but this still needs to be verified in the future. And the potential of this body, even if it is developed to its limit, is only silver level? Furthermore, what are the methods to improve potential? After some fruitless thinking, Gawain looked down, his eyes fell on the ratings, and murmured, iron, a leader among the small fish. That means my current combat power is already at a critical point. If I go one step further, can I reach the bronze level? The main task at the moment is to get familiar with my body. Thinking of this, Gawain closed the system interface, walked out of the captain's room, and came to the deck. Now, it was late at night, and the sea breeze brought cool breezes. The pirates who were originally lying on the deck to rest have also returned to the cabin. Gawain slowly drew out the long sword from his waist and began to swing it according to the sword moves he had learned from memory. Clang! 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 Silver light flickered on the deck, and the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard from time to time. Gawain's sword was moving faster and faster. What his predecessor learned was the most orthodox knight swordsmanship. There were no fancy sword moves, but each move was extremely moderate and peaceful, and the foundation he laid was extremely solid. But in Gawain's hands, it became something else. Sharp and swift, abandoning all complicated techniques and changes, relying on super-fast sword-drawing speed to go straight forward, pursuing the most extreme lethality. It is a sword technique born for killing. The benefits brought by the swiftness are not only reflected in the speed of attack but also in the significant improvement of Gawain's own movement and nerve reaction speed. With his previous body, he couldn't even fully utilize the effect of his speed. But now that his physique has also been raised to level 5, the situation is different. The basic stat has almost doubled, which is fully capable of withstanding this kind of explosion, not to mention that Gawain also has the bonus of the equilibrium. The simultaneous growth of his physique, strength, and agility allowed his body to enter a state of perfect balance. Every attribute can be used to its fullest extent, and the burden on the body is almost zero. My judgment was correct. Physique, agility, and strength complement each other. To fully exert their effects, only when the three are synchronized can it reach the most perfect state. Amidst the sky filled with sword light, Gawain's eyes became brighter, and as he practiced each move, he felt a sense of comfort. It seemed that every cell in his body felt extremely excited. The power in his body is surging endlessly. Finally. Whoosh! As Gawain swung his sword, a silver-white light flew out of his hand and cut off the guardrail of the warship. The remaining force did not decrease and flew all the way to dozens of meters away before slowly dissipating. Flying slash! Looking at the smooth cut on the guardrail, Gawain couldn't suppress the excitement in his eyes. In other words, these common skills of swordsmen can really be learned without system entries? Luckily, I chose swiftness. After all, the other two skills can be mastered by myself through hard practice. Gawain secretly thanked his luck and calmed down to continue practicing his swordsmanship. As he became more familiar with his body, his swordsmanship became more fierce and swift. In the end, only sound on the deck could be heard, but nothing could be seen. Everyone was awakened by the noise on the deck. Seeing the flashing silver light on the deck, they couldn't help swallowing. So fast. That is the flying slash that only a swordsman can master. I have only seen this kind of ability a few times. They looked at each other and saw an unconcealable awe in each other's eyes. Who else but Captain Gawain has such strength on board? Huh. After exhaling a breath of hot air, Gawain ended his training, and then he discovered that the sun had risen in the sky. He worked all night without stopping and was sweating all over, with his clothes all soaked. But his body did not feel tired at all. On the contrary, during such high-intensity training, he only felt that the strength in his body was constantly surging. It was as if something sleeping in this body was completely awakened. At this moment, Gawain finally confirmed that his silver-level potential must be related to the improvement of his physique and equilibrium ability, and the latter is more likely. After all, if it is just a physical improvement, the growth of basic attributes cannot bring about such a fundamental change. If the potential of the silver level can reach this level, then what will the higher levels like gold, diamond, or even platinum be like? Gawain muttered to himself, quietly gripping the sword in his hand tighter. As long as I work hard at practicing, I will definitely be able to go further and even compete with those diamonds rank. Gawain had this confidence, but then he felt his skin become sticky, and the impurities eliminated from last night's physical transformation mixed with sweat gave off a nauseating smell. He turned and walked back to the cabin, washed up briefly and changed his clothes, then returned to the deck. The pirates had already stood in a neat line on the deck, and without even Gawain's urging, they took the initiative to practice swordsmanship. Last night, they witnessed Gawain's swordsmanship. Whether it was the ghostly speed or the flying slashes, it all aroused their desire, and they naturally worked harder on their practice. For a moment, the only sound on the deck was the clashing of swords. Gawain nodded secretly upon seeing this, and after simply correcting the movements of a few people, he let these pirates practice on their own. By late at night, everyone had finished their practice. What Gawain didn't expect was that the experience provided by everyone began to shrink. There are more than 50 people practicing on the deck. According to the previous ratio, they should be able to provide more than 10 points of experience a day. But today, both the gains in physical strength and swordsmanship are only in the pitiful single digits. What's going on? Gawain frowned slightly. He looked at the pirates resting on the deck and quietly opened the system panel. Name, Gabe, potential, iron, rating, iron, swordsmanship apprentice, potential exhausted, potential exhausted. Gawain looked at the content in the rating and gradually understood. How is it possible for a person's abilities to improve without limits? As time goes by, they will always reach a point where, no matter how much they practice, they cannot make any further progress or even maintain their original state. The potential of iron level means that they can only grow to iron level at most. For the boat full of iron fry, the speed at which they reached their limits was much faster than Gawain had imagined. It is foreseeable that the reduction in experience is just the beginning, and Gawain's income will become lower and lower. I need to speed up the recruitment of new talents. If it really doesn't work. A stern look flashed in Gawain's eyes. Despite not being a good person, he doesn't want to do anything bad to the civilians. After all, they were a group of poor people, and there was nothing much to be gained from poor people. But some people were different. Snatch people from my peers. Chapter 11, I, Kuro, just want to live a peaceful life. East Blue. A pirate ship followed Gawain's warship from a distance. A thin man wearing love-star-shaped sunglasses stood on the watchtower, holding a telescope and looking at the warships several kilometers away. After confirming the warship number, the man took out a den mushi from his arms and dialed it. Mashi Mashi. Captain Kuro, we have determined the direction of Morgan's warship. They should be heading to the nearby Mijiki Island for supplies. Good. At the other end of the den mushi, Kuro looked at the bounty in his hand expressionlessly, his tone indifferent. Django, I will reward you when this matter is over. Yes. There was a glimmer of tangible greed in Django's eyes, and the arm holding the telescope couldn't help but tremble. He understood Kuro's character, cruel, ruthless, treacherous, and cunning, but a man of his word. After sailing on the sea for many years and facing countless opponents, from the Marines to pirates, there are even tough guys like Morgan, Admiral Krieg, and Fishmen are long. No one can match Kuro in terms of intelligence. What's more, that skill, which is almost like teleportation, will lead to indiscriminate killing once it is activated. No one can survive under that ability. Django was extremely sure of this, and he was extremely afraid of Kuro. He put down a telescope in his hand and commanded the pirate ship to follow the distant warship from a distance, accurately controlling the distance to a level where it would neither be discovered nor lost. Apparently, he has done this countless times. The other end. After Kuro hung up the phone, he turned to look at the pirate in front of him with a look of deep disgust and fatigue in his eyes. To this day, he has forgotten the reason why he went to sea. He only knows that the claw knives on his 10 fingers have chopped off countless enemies' heads. He also went from being an ordinary pirate to becoming the captain of this pirate group, of course, after killing the original captain. His bounty also increased all the way to above 10 million. Fighting, killing, looting, living a life of drunkenness and dreams. It is foreseeable that such a life will continue until the day he dies at the hands of his enemies. Instead, he envied the peaceful life, planting flowers, raising dogs, and enjoying afternoon tea and desserts, just like the nobles he saw at banquets when he was young. They were elegant and calm. It is not like now. When he opens his eyes, he has to think about how to escape the Marines' pursuit and find my next prey. On the pirate road, failure means death. Who would know? I, Kuro, just want to live a peaceful life. Kuro murmured, a hint of longing in his eyes. However, as long as the plan goes smoothly, that day will come soon. Speaking of it, Kuro picked up a pure white handkerchief and began to gently wipe the cat claws that had been with him for many years, as if he was caressing his lover. 10 minutes later, Kuro walked out of the captain's room. His subordinates were already waiting on the deck. When they saw Kuro's arrival, fear flashed across their faces. Captain. Kuro returned to his expressionless and cold look, and his eyes swept over everyone, making them feel cold all over. Our prey this time is Lieutenant Morgan. As long as the plan goes smoothly, I will temporarily leave the Black Cat pirates, and my successor will be born between Django and the Nayab brothers. If the plan doesn't go well, then I will kill you all. 2 days later. On the captured warship, the lookout reported the situation to Gawain with a serious face. Captain Gawain, someone is following us. The opponent is a veteran and has excellent distance control, but it is inevitable that flaws will be revealed over time. Preliminary inference is that they followed us not long after we left the deserted island. Gawain raised his eyebrows slightly. Ever since that day when he realized that the potential of the people on the ship was about to be exhausted, the experience provided by their training has been shrinking. Even if everyone trains together now, they can only provide a few sporadic experience points every day, and sometimes even none at all. At a time when experience packs were urgently needed, Gawain naturally could not let these colleagues go. Can you tell who it is? The lookout shook his head, They didn't put any flags, but judging by their behavior, they are definitely pirates. I just don't know which pirate group they are from, but they dared to directly track the warship, so they must be powerful. What to do? The lookout looked a little panicked. The pirates on the ship gradually gathered together. When they saw Gawain with a calm face, they seemed to have found their backbone, and their expressions gradually relaxed. Some pirates have even begun checking their guns and ammunition and sharpening their swords. After more than a month of practice, their potential has been almost tapped to the extreme, and their own combat power has naturally improved significantly. Along with the increase in combat power comes the pirates' bloodthirsty instinct. They are eager for a battle to prove themselves. Gawain glanced at the people who were eager to try and said calmly, "When they get closer, be prepared for a fight. Try to capture them alive while ensuring your own safety." "Yes." Everyone responded loudly. The helmsman turned the rudder to full force, raised the sails, and the warship turned around nimbly and headed towards the pirate ship in the distance at full speed. Were we discovered? That's right. Long-term tracking without perfect concealment means will lead to discovery sooner or later. Django looked at the approaching warship, his lips curled up slightly, without any fear in his eyes. Even if the captain was alone, he could kill everyone on Morgan's ship. You should blame yourself for being unlucky to be chosen by the captain and become part of his plan. He turned and directed his men on the ship. Retreat. Reunite with the main ship. The pirate at the helm responded, having just placed his hands on the steering wheel when there were several sharp roars coming from the sky. Several shells landed around the pirate ship, causing a violent explosion. The water column shot up into the sky. At this moment, the den-den-mushi in Django's arms rang. "I am coming." Kuro's voice came from the den-den-mushi without a trace of emotion. On the distant sea surface, the pirate ship led by Kuro cut through the wind and waves and rushed towards the center of the battlefield. Fire gushed out of the muzzle, shooting out red meteors all over the sky. Boom. 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 Amidst the dense artillery fire, several shells hit the warship under Gawain's feet. When the pirates fled, Gawain drew his sword from his waist, and a silver-white flying slash shot out into the air, cutting all the incoming shells in half. The flying slash continues unabated as it shoots toward the sky, instantly attracting the attention of everyone present. What is that? Django didn't understand what it was, but he could feel a fatal threat from the silver light. Just as he was about to make a move, he saw a blonde figure leap up from the warship in the distance and shoot toward the pirate ship under his feet like a cannonball. "You're not Morgan?" Chapter 12, Surrender or Die the next second. Boom. The pirate ship seemed to be hit by a cannonball. A big hole was smashed on the deck, wooden boards were flying, and the mast was broken. Django dodged the flying wooden planks, but his eyes were fixed on the stern figure in the middle of the deck, and he felt a chill down his spine. Although the visitor did not say anything, the aura he exuded gave him the illusion that he was facing Kuro directly. This thought surged in his mind, and Django gradually connected the appearance of the young man in front of him with a bounty in his memory. White Knight Gawain? The one with the bounty of 8 million? When Django said this number, his voice was trembling. Damn it. My bounty is 9 million, so how can a pirate with a bounty of 8 million have such a terrifying, murderous aura? In just a second, Django judged that he was definitely no match for the newcomer. If he wanted to survive, his only chance was to wait for Kuro's support. I can explain. Submit or die. Gawain looked at Django coldly with an indifferent tone. He just wanted to suppress the pirates in front of him as quickly as possible. After all, the potential of the people on his ship has been exhausted, and he is in urgent need of new blood. These pirates in front of him are the best leaks. As for good and evil, right and wrong, who can tell the difference in this ocean? He never thought of himself as a good person, and unlike some people, exploiting civilians was something he did not want to do. Django swallowed his saliva, and before he could continue, the surrounding pirates had already raised their flintlock rifles and looked at Gawain with ferocious faces. Bang! 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 After several consecutive gunshots, Gawain's figure disappeared from the deck. Just as Django was puzzled, a cold voice came into his ears from above. It looks like you made the wrong choice. Everyone looked up. Gawain gently waved his sword, and a silver-white flying slash flew out of his hand, carrying a sharp aura that gradually captured everyone's attention. Whoosh! After a crisp sound, the pirate ship, which was more than 50 meters long and nearly 10 meters in diameter, broke in the middle. Two unlucky pirates were unable to dodge and were hit directly by Gawain's slash, leaving behind an arm and half of their body. Blood gushed out. The scarlet color and the gradually sinking pirate ship awakened everyone's reason. When they looked at the slowly falling figure, there was only fear in their eyes. Monster. A monster like the captain. Django stood on the deck, watching Gawain slowly land on the ground, with only fear in his eyes. Even the captain, who, in his opinion, was invincible, Could not achieve this level with just a sword. Escape. Someone cried out in surprise, and everyone came back to their senses from the shock. However, the sea was vast, the ship was destroyed, and where could they escape to? What Gawain had just said reappeared in Django's mind. He made his choice without hesitation: submit. We surrender. Be careful of Kuro. That guy has a skill called pussyfoot maneuver, and it's so fast that it can't be seen with the naked eye. Hearing this, Gawain raises his eyebrows high. Is he as fast as me? I have no idea. Django shook his head. He had no way of judging since the two had never actually fought, but he knew how terrifying Kuro was. He was a ruthless man who planned everything. In every battle with the enemy, the Black Cat pirates had the three major advantages of time, place, and people. Logically speaking, under such circumstances, the casualties in the Black Cat pirates should be kept to a very small number. But the fact is just the opposite. The Black Cat pirates pay a heavy price in every battle. The vast majority of them did not die at the hands of the enemy but fell to Kuro's indiscriminate attack. I admit that you are strong, but Kuro is also a real monster. His bounty and combat power don't match at all. Most of the pirates and marines officers who have disappeared in the East Blue in recent years have become his prey. Django's expression was solemn. It can be said that there is no psychological burden at all when it comes to betraying his captain, or it can be said that bowing to the strong is the instinct of most pirates. Yeah? Gawain did not comment, turned his head to look at the pirate who was still struggling in the sea, and said, try to survive first, at least until the end of this battle. I'll go test Kuro's strength. After saying that, Gawain stepped heavily, and the terrifying force directly pushed the wreckage of the pirate ship under his feet completely into the water. He used this force to shoot towards the warship 100 meters away. A pirate handed Django a life buoy, then turned to look at Gawain and asked in confusion, Boss, are we just going to betray the captain like this? Betray? Django held the life buoy, a hint of ridicule on his face. If Gawain wins, we will just be paying our tribute. If Kuro wins, who among those present will take the initiative to tell him about this? We can't lose no matter what we choose. Besides, you don't really think that Kuro will trust us, do you? How could he not know about the little tricks the Nayab brothers are doing in private? He just doesn't care. Everyone in the pirate group is just a tool to him. I just realized that when Kuro completes his plan, our existence will become his only flaw. Given Kuro's personality, what will be our fate? The pirate was stunned, and then he felt a chill rising from the bottom of his heart, even more chilling than the icy seawater. Bang! Gawain landed steadily on the warship without even getting his clothes wet while the sea had swallowed the pirate ship that was tracking them. The exaggerated battle record made everyone on the warship almost regard him as a god. While showing awe on their faces, they also felt a sense of confidence in their hearts. As long as the captain doesn't fall, the White Knight pirate will not fall. Gawain took in everyone's excited gazes, but he didn't pay attention to them. He turned to look at the first mate beside him. How's the battle going here? The first mate said respectfully, our people haven't had time to familiarize themselves with the cannons on the warships. Their accuracy is not good enough. Those pirates are not well equipped and can't damage the warships. If we really want to decide the outcome, we have to rely on boarding. Here they come. Suddenly, the lookout uttered a cry of surprise. Gawain looked up. He saw a pirate ship approaching rapidly. With Gawain's eyesight, he could already see the thin man with a stern face and a gloomy look standing on the deck opposite him. The man wore strangely shaped claw knives on his 10 fingers. The sharp blades made him have to use his palms to push his glasses up. But this awkward movement made the aura emanating from his body even more ferocious. Not Morgan? Far away, Kuro, who was standing on the deck, was slightly stunned, and his face suddenly darkened. It was not Morgan, but he was on Morgan's ship, and the other party's attire was obviously not that of a marine. There was no need to say more about what had happened. No wonder your movement didn't seem like Morgan's course of action at the sea. Never mind. The scenario would be the pirates fight, and both sides suffer losses, and Kuro is seriously injured and killed. Although it is not as safe as being arrested by the marines, it is still acceptable. Chapter 13, It's just that afterward, I need to kill all the people present to be safe. Thinking of this, the murderous aura in Kuro became increasingly difficult to suppress, and even his subordinates around him subconsciously chose to stay away. Soon, the distance between the warship and the pirate ship was shortened to less than 100 meters, and the almost close-range bombardment was blocked by the two men with their weapons. Bang! The two ships collided with a deafening noise. The most intense fight broke out in an instant. The pirates under Gawain showed an overwhelming advantage in the early stages of the hand-to-hand combat. After all, the skills and experience of both sides were not on the same level. In just a dozen seconds, more than a dozen bodies were lying on Kuro's ship. If it hadn't been for the existence of the Naib brothers, the pirates under Kuro would have been completely suppressed in the first encounter. What's wrong with these people? Ordinary pirates have this level of swordsmanship? I'm afraid they are from some swordsmanship school. Sham waved his claws to deflect the blade that was slashing toward him, but just in the next moment, more people rushed over excitedly, and swords and claws clashed again. He and Butchie barely managed to deal with the pirates under Gawain's command, but their situation is extremely difficult. On the battlefield, the two captains tacitly did not take any action. They exchanged glances and sensed absolute confidence in each other's eyes. When did a person like you emerge in the East Blue? Kuro slowly wears a pair of black furred gloves, and the silver cat claws reflect cold light in the air. There have been many people from the East Blue. Some have won the title of king in the New World, while others have been praised by the Marines as heroes who saved the world. Gawain said calmly, "Would you like to be my crew?" "Oh." Kuro sneered, "If it were a few years ago, I would have considered taking you under my wing, but now I'm tired of playing the pirate game, so I can only send you to hell." "That's a pity." As soon as the voice fell, both of them attacked at the same time. Whoosh! There were two explosions in the air that almost completely overlapped with each other, and two figures, one black and one white, rushed towards each other at the same time. Sparks flew in the air as the cat claws and the knight's sword collided, followed by a series of dense raindrop-like sounds of metal clashing. Bang! 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 Sparks flew in the air, but only the sound was heard, and no one was seen. Both of them specialized in speed. One has mastered a skill that makes him so fast that he's almost invisible to the naked eye. While the other one awakens the swiftness feature, his nerve reaction and sword-drawing speed are superior to ordinary people, and he even has a strong physique. He can be said to be a real monster. As the confrontation became more intense, the weapons of both men began to show gaps to varying degrees, but the looks in each other's eyes became brighter. Kuro kept swinging the cat claws in his hand, but he felt that the long sword in Gawain's hand was like a poisonous snake that could penetrate any hole. Even if it was just a tiny flaw, Gawain would seize the opportunity and stab it with his sword. Whoosh! A silver-white sword flashed, and blood splattered. Kuro was injured. Although only the skin on his shoulder was scratched, Kuro's eyes could not help but narrow. Suppressed. I was suppressed in the aspect of speed, which is my best skill. Interesting. Really interesting. Kuro's suppressed fighting spirit was fully awakened in the increasingly fierce battle, and the pain in his body made his spirit even more excited. The opposite is the increasing speed. Originally, people around could barely see Kuro's afterimage, but now, even the afterimage can't be seen, only claw marks keep appearing on the ship's deck. It's the pussyfoot maneuver. The captain has taken action seriously. Oh no. A member of the Black Cat Pirates had a terrified look on his face. He just let out a scream, and the next moment, a row of neat scratches appeared on his chest, deep enough to penetrate the bones and injure his internal organs. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, then fell on his back. At the same time, the members of the Black Cat Pirates who reacted no longer had the will to fight and retreated one after another, some even jumping into the sea because only in this way could they avoid Kuro's indiscriminate attack. This trick called pussyfoot maneuver is simply beyond the control of humans. Sham, go. The captain has used that ability. This is now his territory. No one can survive. If we continue to stay here, even we will be. Before Butchie could finish his words, several scars appeared on his shoulders. Fortunately, he had thick skin and was not seriously injured, but the fear of this move in his heart was fully awakened at this moment. Quick! That White Knight Gawain is dead. No enemy has ever survived this move. Even pirates returning from the Grand Line with bounties exceeding 20 million belly have been badly hurt by this move. Butchie covered his wound, turned around, and went into the cabin. Sham raised his hand to repel the attacking pirates and followed him in. On deck, one pirate after another fell down in a daze, and some even had their heads and limbs chopped off. In just a few seconds, except for Gawain, there was no one left standing on the deck. Kuro, who has used his pussyfoot maneuver, is like the god of death. He reaps lives with a speed invisible to the naked eye. Once this move is used, I can barely control the direction. As for what I will hit, it all depends on luck. Kuro's voice came from left to right as if it was everywhere. It turns out that it was Morgan's fault. All my plans were so perfect. As long as I kill him, I can successfully shed my identity as a pirate and have a peaceful and comfortable life. But as long as I kill you, everything will be fine. If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck. Yeah? Gawain looked calm. His eyes moved rapidly and followed Kuro, who was moving at a high speed and in an irregular manner. In addition to transforming his body to make it faster, swiftness also greatly improved his nerve reflexes. Things that are invisible to ordinary people are clearly visible to him. Your abilities are even better than I thought. Gawain exclaimed, I am increasingly tempted to recruit you under my wing and make you my right-hand man, Kuro. Stop joking. Kuro's angry roar was heard in the air. At this moment, he felt that the man in front of him was extremely stupid. He was still thinking about such things when he was on the verge of death. Die. While moving at an extremely high speed, Kuro's eyes barely caught sight of the last figure on the deck. Who else but Gawain? After trying several times, he finally placed Gawain on his path, then his claws spread as he rushed towards Gawain. At this moment, he almost saw Gawain's death, his chest and abdomen torn open, his internal organs spilling out onto the ground. But the next moment, bang! A sharp explosion resounded through the sky, and Kuro's rushing figure suddenly stopped. He felt as if he had been hit head-on by a cannonball, and his internal organs were about to come out of his mouth. The surrounding scene gradually became clear. Kuro came out of his dazed state and found that the hilt of the sword in Gawain's hand was directly against his chest. Kuro was not interested in the pain in his body and looked at Gawain in shock. Can you see it? Yes, I can see it. Chapter 14, Pirates don't age, they only die. I don't believe it. Kuro gritted his teeth and swallowed the blood in his mouth, then launched the pussyfoot maneuver again. He turned into a phantom and disappeared into the air. Although his speed was fast, among the strong men he had fought before, there were people who could keep up with his speed. But the pussyfoot maneuver is different. In order to achieve that exaggerated speed, he even abandoned his own perception and attacked indiscriminately, but in return, he gained a speed more than twice that of his usual speed. There's no way a human could keep up with his speed. Kuro's voice, coming near and far, was heard again in the air. The ferocious cat claws attacked indiscriminately again, from the mast to the deck railing, everything in sight was leaving cuts at an extremely fast speed. In a rage, Kuro's speed was even 3 points faster than before. But in his blurred vision, the figure standing in the middle of the deck was as still as a mountain, and its mere existence exuded an invisible oppression. I don't believe you won't die from this blow. Kuro gritted his teeth, protected his face with his arms, and unfolded the sharp cat claws at his side. The blade broke through the air and made a piercing scream. Cat out of the bag attack. As the sound landed, Kuro turned into a stream of light and rushed towards Gawain. He barely raised his head and opened his eyes to look at Gawain in the distance. His blurred vision met a pair of eyes without a trace of emotion. He really saw it. The moment this thought came into his mind, Kuro felt terrified, and then Gawain's indifferent voice suddenly appeared in his ears. Kuro, the upper limit of human beings is much higher than you think. As the sound landed, a silver-white light quickly enlarged Kuro's sight, and he instantly realized that Gawain had simply placed the sword in his path. But in this state, he almost completely lost control of his body and could only barely sense the enemy's position and control the general direction. In this distance, it can't be avoided. He will be cut in half. At this moment, Kuro recalled the tragic scenes of the enemies he had killed, and his heart calmed down. Perhaps he had anticipated this day when he killed the former captain and took over. Only now did he realize that he was already old when he got tired of the pirate life. Pirates don't age, they only die. Whoosh! The next moment, Kuro rushed straight into it, but the expected chill of having his body cut off did not come to him. Instead, he felt a large hand with distinct joints pressing firmly on his chest. Cough. Kuro coughed up blood again. Although he avoided being cut in half, being forced to stop at this speed was not much different from being hit by a cannonball. At least 5 ribs were broken, and his internal organs were damaged to varying degrees. Every time he breathed, he felt like his chest was burning. Clatter. A long sword was pressed on Kuro's shoulder. The blade had been curled or even broken in the previous fight, but the person holding the sword made him feel awe-inspiring. The East Blue is too small. It can't accommodate you, nor me. Be my second in command, Kuro. Gawain called out to recruit him again. He really wanted to bring the man in front of him under his command. Even without talking about his potential, just the fact that Kuro is ranked second in the world in terms of IQ makes him a top-notch crew. Besides, Kuro's potential is also impressive. A screen invisible to everyone unfolded before Gawain's eyes. Name, Kuro, potential, bronze, rating, iron. He has an extremely outstanding talent for footwork, but unfortunately, his physical talent holds him back. However, iron rating is not his limit. Kuro is the only one Gawain has seen so far, other than himself, whose potential surpasses iron. According to the system's evaluation standards, if bronze-level talent is developed to the limit, one can reach the threshold of being a rear admiral in the Marines, and among pirates, he would be a figure with a bounty of over 100 million, enough to serve as a cadre of a large force. Gawain was also very interested in Kuro's footwork, which was called pussyfoot maneuver. Some people have compared this footwork with the Marine's instant transmission, but in Gawain's opinion, the two are simply not comparable. To make an inappropriate analogy, instant transmission is blink while pussyfoot maneuver is acceleration. The principle of instant transmission is to hit the ground dozens of times in a short period of time in exchange for super explosive speed. The pussyfoot maneuver can maintain a super high speed state all the time, but it has the defect of being uncontrollable. This skill is very similar to Cavendish's second personality ability, the Kama at Achi of Rommel. Both of them have speeds that surpass the capabilities of ordinary people, and both have their own limitations, but it is obvious that pussyfoot maneuver's upper limit is higher. After all, as long as the perception problem during high-speed movement is solved, all the defects will be made up, and Gawain happens to know the method. Oh. Kuro chuckled, with a relieved expression on his face. Is this my end? It's really ugly. Ha 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 ha. Hoarse laughter echoed across the deck. The members of the Black Cat Pirates, who had just escaped a disaster, slowly returned to the deck, but the scene before them was completely the opposite of what they had imagined. Kuro was half kneeling on the ground, grinning, ready to die calmly after being defeated. Gawain looked down at him with a hint of regret in his eyes. The pussyfoot maneuver move has been cracked? How is that possible? How could anyone be able to keep up with the speed of that move? Sham spat out a series of questions. If it weren't for the fact that the wounds on his body were still aching, he would have thought it was all a dream. But looking at Kuro half kneeling on the deck, all his questions were answered. White Knight Gawain, I have heard of this name before, but the bounty is only 8 million, how can he be so powerful? Butchie asked in confusion as he slowly stood up. A sea breeze blew by, bringing a cool breeze, and at the same time, the rolled-up bounty hit Butchie in the face. He grabbed it and took a quick look. His body trembled violently, and he began to stutter. 48 million? What 48 million? Sham leaned over to look at the number on the bounty and then compared the photo with Gawain in the distance and felt a chill down his spine. White Knight Gawain, bounty. 48 million belly? Isn't Arlong the one with the highest bounty in the East Blue? When did such a big shot appear? At this moment, Gawain's eyes swept over. The Nyaban brothers raised their hands without any hesitation and announced their surrender. In order to appear non-threatening, they even took off the cat claw weapon in their hand. We surrender. Captain Gawain, we have quite some strength and have some value to you. Gawain did not respond but turned to look at Kuro and said calmly, the hypnotist named Django has also surrendered. He was the one who revealed your information to me. Kuro, you have no chance of turning the tables. Chapter 15, Once a Pirate, Always a Pirate. Upon hearing this, Kuro closed his eyes. The opponent showed overwhelming strength and severely injured him. He had lost the strength to fight again. His subordinates had also turned against him. Of course, he knew that what Gawain said was true. But he was really tired of being a pirate. Rather than indulging in endless killing, it is better to end it all now. Kuro closed his eyes and prepared to be killed. Gawain was unwilling to give up. He regarded both the pussyfoot maneuver and Kuro's talent as something in his pocket. After a moment's silence, Gawain said, I heard from Django that you want to take off this outfit, change your identity and start over? Kuro opened his eyes. Before he died, he didn't mind saying a few more words. You are still young, and you still have the idea of making a name for yourself through success or even grabbing that elusive One Piece. When you reach my age, you will understand that endless killing has no meaning except to wear down people's will. Only an ordinary and peaceful life is real. Between these words, a longing expression appeared on Kuro's face. He had once lived a life like that, but he eventually ruined it with his own hands. Oh. Gawain sneered and asked, you don't really think that you can get rid of Pirate's identity by taking off this suit? Even in the so-called most peaceful East Blue, how many towns are attacked every day? How much money do you have to satisfy the desires of the nobility and a skyrocketing heavenly tribute? Do you still remember why those people on your ship set out to sea in the first place? Kuro was stunned, and his face turned paler. He is an extremely intelligent person, how could he not understand such a simple truth? It's just that people look at the white moonlight through a filter and may even subconsciously ignore the problems in it. Now, Kuro, who has come to his senses after hearing Gawain's questioning, wakes up. A peaceful life? That means handing the knife to others. Do you count on those nobles, pirates, or even corrupt marines? Oh. Kuro sneered, this filthy world really doesn't want people to survive at all. Gawain continued, as long as you are strong enough to make everyone afraid of you, you will naturally have a peaceful life. I even know a real-life example. He was once a pirate, but now he's retired and living the life you expect. The Marines and the world government know of his existence, but both sides have chosen to remain silent. Do you know why? Why? because he is the former right-hand man of King of the Pirates. Even if the Marines want to take action against him, they need to weigh the losses. Kuro was silent. He closed his eyes and lay on the deck, but the cat claws on his fingertips kept shaking. The air fell into silence for a moment, and all the pirates looked at the scene in front of them silently. Gawain was also waiting for Kuro's answer. After a few seconds, Kuro opened his eyes and looked at Gawain with burning eyes. "So, what is your purpose?" Gawain thought for a moment and said, "First, go to the Grand Line and take the title of Warlord." Kuro was stunned. He expected Gawain to go to the Grand Line, but the identity of Warlord had another meaning in his eyes: escape the Marines' pursuit. As long as this is achieved, Kuro can live a relatively peaceful life to a certain extent. Although it was not as perfect as the original plan, Gawain's words proved that it was nothing more than a self-deceiving fantasy. Although becoming one of the 7 warlords of the sea is still far away, it is truly feasible. Kuro pushed his glasses up with his palm, and a different kind of light emanated from his pupils. "Although I am unwilling, I will be grateful for your guidance in the future, Captain." "Ah, Kuro, my deputy." Gawain smiled and pulled Kuro up. The latter had just been severely injured, but his waist was still straight. Standing next to Gawain, he instantly had the temperament of a second-in-command. "The captain and 3 cadres have surrendered." The members of the Black Cat Pirates naturally had no reason to continue fighting. Under Kuro's orders, they simply laid down their weapons and announced their surrender. The battle had only lasted a dozen minutes or so from the beginning, but the casualties on both sides had already exceeded 1/3. Fortunately, the Black Cat Pirates originally had 3 ships, and the number of people was close to 200. Even after deducting the casualties, Gawain now has nearly 200 people under his command. Gawain organized the pirate group's ship doctors and began treating the wounded. The wounded were lined up neatly on the deck of the warship, and the ship's doctors walked among the crowd, treating their injuries. "Ah!" The ship's doctor poured high-proof alcohol directly onto the wound on a pirate's thigh. The pirate's body instantly tensed up, and his face looked like a cooked shrimp. Gawain's eyes twitched. If possible, he would like everyone to receive more professional treatment. "I still need to find a professional ship doctor afterward. The conditions on the sea are crude. For injured pirates, the only treatment is to disinfect the wound with alcohol and suture it after stopping the bleeding. Whether they can survive the wound infection depends entirely on their luck. As for those pirates whose injuries were too severe to be saved, the only thing they could do was to kill them quickly. These pirates were already used to this, and even Gawain did not feel any pity. After all, even if a huge price is paid, in the end, it will only make them die in longer pain. Since then, the Black Cat Pirates have officially been incorporated into the White Knight Pirate. A few days later, Gawain also announced publicly that Kuro would serve as the vice-captain of the pirate group, while the Naib brothers and Django would continue to serve as cadres. Naturally, no one had any objection to this. Gawain's former subordinates revered him as a god, and the former members of the Black Cat Pirates who witnessed Gawain crushing Kuro feared him even more than Kuro. The next day, Gawain then asked everyone to start practicing. Ordinary pirates follow Gawain to practice swordsmanship, while elite crews like Kuro, the Naib brothers, and Django, who have their own fighting methods, practice according to their own habits. After obtaining a new goal, Kuro turned into a madman. He stayed in the training room on the warship all day long and practiced madly. In order to avoid injury, Kuro even added a layer of protective padding on the wall of the training room. Gawain was naturally happy about this. After all, 200 people trained together, many of whom were new members of the pirate group. On the first night of practice, Gawain gained more than 40 points of swordsmanship and 30 points of physique experience. The magnitude of the surge of experience points even surprised him. "The potential of my subordinates has almost reached its limit. These experiences should be provided by the newcomers. However, according to the proportion, these ordinary pirates should only be able to provide more than 20 points of physique's experience. Should the extra ones be provided by Kuro? Is this the extent of bronze-level potential?" Gawain made a brief calculation. Kuro alone can provide him with more than 10 experience points every day. Because of his greater potential, his total output is far higher than that of ordinary pirates. How strong will Sanji and Zoro's output would be? Gawain couldn't help but look forward to it. Suddenly, the system prompt sounded again in his ears: unlock a new skill, Pussyfoot Maneuver. Pussyfoot Maneuver, Level 0, 6/100ths, Chapter 16, 3 Type of Hockey. Here it comes. Gawain's eyes lit up. There is no need to explain how powerful Pussyfoot Maneuver is, especially since he has the nerve reaction speed to keep up with Pussyfoot Maneuver's super speed. As long as he masters this ability, his combat power will truly undergo a qualitative change. His original rating was at the limit of Iron, And if he broke through again, he would be able to reach bronze. The bronze level is considered a top figure in the first half of the Grand Line. If it were in the East Blue, it would be a complete massacre. But currently, the level of this skill is only level 0, which means it has just been awakened and has not been mastered yet, so it cannot be used in actual combat. Gawain was not in a hurry. After all, Kuro is already at the level of a madman, and now that he has found his goal, it is even more so. It is true that he longs for a peaceful and comfortable life, but in order to achieve his goals, he is not only cruel to others but also to himself. Just looking at the bruises on Kuro's body after his daily training, Gawain was shocked but also more relieved. Leeks should just practice hard like this, unlike the people who cut them, who have so many things to consider. Gawain smiled knowingly, then stood up and walked towards the training room on the warship. Now, it's already late at night. There were gusts of cold wind blowing outside the window from time to time. Except for the pirates who were in charge of night watch and navigation, almost everyone else on the warship went into the cabin to sleep. Only the occasional loud collision sounds could be heard from the training room, and it was obvious that Kuro was still training. Bronze level potential not only means that his ceiling is higher but also means that his body has an endurance far beyond that of ordinary people. Due to the uncontrollable nature of the skill of pussyfoot maneuver, this place has almost become Kuro's personal training ground. Bang! 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 At a very high speed, Kuro kept crashing into the wall. Even with the protection of a pad, bruises were inevitable on his body. But he had no intention of stopping. Instead, he squeezed the potential of his body more and more intensely. His speed was getting faster, but at the same time, this move was becoming more and more difficult to control, and the speed of his nerve reaction greatly limited his improvement. While training, he became more curious about how Gawain could see through the speed of pussyfoot maneuver. With thoughts surging in his mind, Kuro's figure gradually slowed down. He stretched out his hands to support his knees and gasped for breath with sweat all over his body as if he had been pulled out of the water. "Captain?" Only then did Kuro notice that the door of the training room had already been opened, and Gawain was standing at the door, looking at him indifferently. Without any hesitation, Kuro directly asked the doubts in his heart, "How on earth did you see through the speed of pussyfoot maneuver?" As long as the uncontrollable problem of pussyfoot maneuver is solved, Kuro's combat power will skyrocket, and he will not be without the ability to fight even against the current Gawain. It's hard to say who will be whose deputy by then. Besides, after entering the Grand Line, it may not be Gawain who takes over the title of Warlord of the Sea. Kuro thought so in his heart but did not show any expression on his face. He just looked like he was humbly seeking advice. Gawain did not see through Kuro's little thoughts, and even if he did, he would not care. After all, for every point of progress you make, I can gain 10 points. If he can still fail in this situation, then he should really not be the captain. If overthrowing himself as captain would allow his subordinates to become stronger, Gawain would even want to stick his own photo on the training target. Gawain looked at Kuro and said, "It's natural, but if you want to improve the controllability of the pussyfoot maneuver, there are different ways. Physical transformation to increase nerve reaction speed, or devil fruit, can achieve immediate results." Kuro shook his head, looking somewhat disappointed. "I've thought of all these methods. The probability of physical transformation failing is high, and I have never heard of any place that can perform nerve transformation. Devil fruits are rare, and those that can increase nerve reaction speed are even rarer. Is there absolutely no possibility of completing this move?" That may not be the case. Gawain saw that the time was almost right, so he stopped teasing Kuro. Everyone has a hidden power in their body, and it's called hockey. The hockey that can be attached to the body or weapons to directly enhance offensive and defensive capabilities are called armament hockey. The hockey that only 1 in a million can have and can be used to knock out the opponent is called conqueror's hockey, and the hockey is that sense beyond the 5 senses that allows one to see enemies behind or even outside of one's field of vision and to read the opponent's actions in advance is called observation hockey. And the observation hockey can perfectly solve the problem of pussyfoot maneuver. "Hockey?" Kuro's eyes lit up. "Captain, have you mastered this power?" "No, I just have quick reflexes." Gawain spread his hands helplessly as he spoke. Kuro's mouth twitched, and he wanted more and more to overthrow the man in front of him and become the captain again. Gawain continued, "In the Grand Line, especially in the New World, many strong people master hockey. It can even be said that you can't survive in the New World if you don't know how to use hockey. You can try to see if you can awaken your observation hockey. Limit your 5 senses and rely on your intuition to perceive your surroundings." Intuition. Kuro looked thoughtful. After pondering for a moment, he found a piece of cloth and wrapped it around his eyes, then began to try to rely on his vague intuition to perceive his surroundings. Whoosh! Kuro launched a pussyfoot maneuver and, lost control and crashed into the wall, almost breaking the pad. Then, there was a series of dense collision sounds. Hiss. Gawain gasped. The scene was painful to watch. He simply turned and left. Time passed quickly, and the noise in the training room gradually died down. Kuro, who had taken off the cloth strip, gnashed his teeth in pain and started to curse. Are you kidding me? What's this sixth sense beyond the five senses? Is he fooling me? Gawain, who had already fallen asleep, turned over and slept more soundly. The next day, Kuro did not practice as usual. Gawain wanted to go and ask the reason. But when he saw Kuro's bandages and murderous eyes, he could only give an awkward and polite smile. You know, this kind of thing can't be rushed. Roll. Kuro immediately turned red in anger. If he wasn't injured and couldn't win, he really wanted to fight. However, he did not give up. Although he felt resentful, he knew more clearly that Gawain would not lie to him about such a thing. First of all, he would be following Gawain to the Grand Line soon, so if it was a lie, it would be self-defeating. Secondly, with Gawain's courage, he would not lie about such a thing. So, on only the third day, Kuro, who had barely recovered from his injuries, began to try to practice observation hockey again, and as expected, he went to the infirmary again. Both hands were fractured, and there were multiple soft tissue contusions. Even with his physical condition, he won't be able to enter the training room again within half a month. Gawain looked at the system panel and saw the pussyfoot maneuver, which had just reached level 1, and he couldn't stop smiling. Chapter 17, Have you learned it now? The pale blue system panel appeared in front of Gawain again. Host, Gawain, age, 24, identity, Captain of the White Knight Pirate, epithet, White Knight, skill, swordsmanship, level 5, 1021-1600, swiftness physique, level 5, 281,600, equilibrium navigation, level 1, 12/100ths, pussyfoot maneuver, level 1, 3200, badge, Captain's Fury, subordinates physical strength recovery speed plus 20%. Rising fame, you can check the potential level of your subordinates. Rating, bronze, you are a big shot in the world and even in paradise, but please keep your head down in the new world. With the awakening of the pussyfoot maneuver, his rating was finally promoted to bronze. I finally got rid of the title of trash. It wasn't easy. Gawain smiled faintly. Then, countless experiences about the pussyfoot maneuver instantly flooded into his mind. His legs also gradually became warm. Along with a numb and itchy feeling, it felt like countless mice were swarming under the skin of his calf, causing spasmodic pain. That was the skill of pussyfoot maneuver, which constantly transformed the structure and muscles of his legs, making them the most suitable state for the skill. A few minutes later, the changes in Gawain's body gradually stopped. His legs became longer, and he felt incredibly light. He took a step forward instinctively and instantly appeared several meters away. It will take time to get familiar with this move. Thinking of this, Gawain walked directly into the training room and began to familiarize himself with the pussyfoot maneuver he had just acquired. He took a step forward and disappeared into thin air in an instant. The next moment, bang! Gawain crashed into the wall, and even with his strengthened body, he felt a sharp pain. Fortunately, with his physique, he did not suffer any injuries. Gawain fell down and was covered in dust, but his expression was not discouraged. Although pussyfoot maneuver's level is only level 1, my speed seems to be faster than Kuro's and more difficult to control. But there's nothing wrong with my perception during high-speed movement. I'm probably not familiar enough with this move. I need to practice. Then, the familiar sound of collision was heard again in the practice room. Bang! 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 The continuous banging sounds were exactly the same as the noises produced by Kuro's practice a few days ago. In the infirmary, the ship's doctor, Jayaka, who had just checked everyone's injuries, heard a familiar noise and frowned. Deputy Captain is starting to train again? I told him several times that it would take at least half a month for his broken bones to heal, but he just wouldn't listen. Alas. Only someone who is so fearless can gain such monstrous power. Aesop, what do you think is? The ship's doctor, Jayaka, wanted to turn around and talk to the nurse, Aesop, but he saw Kuro lying on the hospital bed without saying a word. He was stunned and asked doubtfully, the one in the training room, isn't you?